Yeah, well, a game. Well, I mean, people want us to talk about it this week, but let me.
No, I
Oh
mean
my god.
it's just funny because I think it was what the chat that we're both in with Pat, and he was just like, someone had shared the image of Anita Sarkeesian having a wedding themed birthday party to celebrate her
Oh my
40th.
god. Yeah, those PvP shared it.
Yeah. Uh, so shout out to our other rotund Canadian friends for sharing these things. But yeah, I had just simply done the gif of Walter White saying, I won. And it's like Carl Benjamin right now because, he's got a successful business. He's married. He has children of his own now.
Yeah.
If you were to tell me 10 years ago that in the state of everything that Sargon of Akkad has a running newscast, his own business, a father, and is the more successful one out of these degenerate scumbags, who would have guessed? But it's a good time nonetheless. It's the eternal present of 2014. We must stay in 2014 at all times and in all places
Forever.
because forever. And I mean, this was something I was noticing because I'm writing this essay that'll hopefully next week. But it was just like really crazy to think that there is no future, right? Like everything is about the eternal present for like progressives, right? There's nothing
Oh
about a
yeah.
future. I mean, because everything has to be focused on the now. Because for a lot of like, especially millennial leftists, there is this desire to always be like the movie bobs of the world, where it's like, I was supposed to have my flying cars and my UBI by now, but you chuds have ruined it. So I must exist in the eternal present in order to ensure that the future one day may be secured. And of course, that future never comes, right? Because the very aspect of living only within the present kills you because they can't look towards the past. They have to constantly reify the past, so it's bad, it's sexist, it's nasty, and they can't ever look towards the future of things because, well, that would mean that the jig is up and that their message and their ideals don't work. I'm noticing this
Yeah.
as I'm reading through Derrida, of all people. I'm reading The Spectres of Marx again. And he's referring, of course, to Hamlet and a lot of this, like the spirit, of course, the time is out of joint, but also that the spirit is a spirit in which can be before and of now and of the future. It is out of time and out of place from our corporeal understanding of it. Whereas, like the
Mm.
progressive of today, right, only understands the time that is now. They can imagine futures, but those futures are only these unreality images, these icons of a future that can only exist within the framework of the present. So I like that Chobani Solar Punk commercial. Like, what is that? It is an unreality image of what they wish the world to be that can only exist within the framework of the present. There is no futurism inside the left outside of the orgiastic, orgasmic death throes that will come when the last white Westerners is eradicated, and that's sort of their
or
perspective there.
became something else,
Or yeah, or
transformed.
transmogrifies, or
Mm.
I won't say any other words that immediately came
The
to mind.
Transformers, the Decepticons,
Oh,
yeah.
no, I
Yeah.
was thinking, racially speaking. I mean, just,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
the great Bayesianing of the world is what they want. And I mean, again, it reflects in Nvidia, it reflects in everything, but it's that eternal recurrence of the present because that is the only thing that allows them to live in this like time is a flat circle meme from Nietzsche, where it's just like time is a flat circle if you're a progressive. Everything has never been the same since 2012, and we must constantly go on a loop of that because if we were to ever
Well,
dare escape it, heaven
it's funny.
forbid.
I was recording digital art, digital art. I was recording a content minded about that, but I was talking about the Heidegger in the event in Ignis because of this tweet from Thomas. And I did talk about that, about how it's like an eternal present. There was this tweet I saw about um some like marketing from some video game, was it Nintendo, some video game company, and it's like now they're doing nostalgia for 2013. It's like
Yeah,
we have nothing left.
we
We
talked
have
about
slut
it last
culture.
night on Mr. D's Space about someone had the
Yeah.
Nintendo 3DS, and that's what made them feel old. But I mean, like that's just part of the whole technology is micro generation type deal, right?
Mhm.
Like whatever you grew up with as a kid is what you were going to be associated with. Like, oh, I was the iPad generation. Oh, I was the Walkman generation. I was like the Usenet, AOL, Instant Messenger generation. But now, because tech moves so fast, right? Like, there are people that are just like a few years younger than me that talk about their social media experiences, and I have no idea what the hell they're talking about because I wasn't on that
Yeah.
tech when it came out. And the same way older millennials, right? Like those entering their 40s, like, you know, they remember the Facebook when it was the Facebook, not, you know, the schlocky boomer slop that it is today. And I mean, it is sort of interesting to witness that we've stopped hearing about when people are born, outside of maybe like census takers and polling data, but like every generation is sort of a micro generation now when it comes to technology and when they were born, and that sort of determines a lot, which is really crazy to think of considering there used to be a monoculture and now that's
Oh yeah.
dead.
Well, who was the guy originally on the banner of Facebook? Was it Al Pacino in some movie? It was like
The original banner for the
the
Facebook.
very like 2007 original when he first him and that team first created the website Facebook. I think it was like was it Al Pacino? I forget. It was like
I don't
some
remember. I don't
yeah, this
recall.
was like ancient history. But anyway,
Especially to today, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry. I don't know. Anyways, this is the Digital Archipelago, episode 81. We have some good things for you. We have, please, my entropy is there if you don't want to give Susan Wachowski your money. Wachowski.
It's Raja Mohan now.
Oh, it's Raja Mohan now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But of course, please donate. Please subscribe and sneed those super chats.
Do the needful.
Do the needful. Yeah, and
Do the needful.
do the needful. And yeah, so it's pinned in the comments there. But we have an article about postmodern landscape painting and this thread up by Grimez about the Gemini AI take, which I think is quite good. But I guess everyone wants us to talk about Gamergate 2.0, and you being a gamer know more than I. About
I just
this.
opened up because I saw PPP share the wedding birthday party, which was so depressing. But honestly, what a fitting in. I mean, it's sort of the same thing that all those anti-suffragettes were talking about. Like, you look at those old anti-19th Amendment or even anti-British votes for women things, and it's just like, you know, at age 50, unmarried and a suffragette. And there is just that whole basic male argument, like, hey, you know, if you're not with somebody, you're going to have a lot of spare time on your hands. And I mean, this is, again, why I tell people over and over again, most, if not all of the critiques that Charles Dickens bitches about in Bleak House are still true. Like, we live in Mrs. Jellybee's longhouse and we've never left it, right? But then of course, I don't know the whole deal with the whole Sweet Baby Inc. thing. I know that they recently had a Kotaku article defending them. They changed all their mission statements so that they basically didn't sound like one big gay trans mafia about, like, listen, if your game isn't gay or brown enough, we're going to have problems with your studio. And it's just the way that the world works now. This is why I look forward to indie studios.
So what's this company though? Like, what's the shtick with what's it called?
Sweet Baby Inc.
Sweet Baby Inc. Like, what do they do? They're a games company, or
no? They are a consultancy company.
Okay.
Because it offers consultancy work, you know, which of course, and people defending it are saying that's an industry standard service, which has been normal for years. And sure, absolutely. But I mean, when people are like Kim Belair, who is one of the co-founders of the consultancy company, explains that the method she uses to force bosses at game studios to censor, alter, and diversify game projects that she feels are problematic, quote, terrify them. Which of course means threatening, and to of course rile up the anger of cancel culture, which, you know, if you consider the decline in the AAA industry in like the last 10 years or so, like smaller studios and AA and indie developers have been going really well. And that's sort of that's the nature of things, though, and I've told people that before, is that like every time that the market either has a huge management problem, a glut problem, or in this case, an ideological one, people leave, people get fired, and they try and start their own projects. I mean, like, the best example I think out of late has been like Kingdom Come Deliverance. That was a great RPG, and it's like historically accurate to, I think, just the Poland area. And it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a white area, it's a Christian area. There's not going to be any Africans here, and that, of course, gets people upset because the eternal precedent is that there are brown people everywhere, and we can't have a historical past where that wasn't the case. Hence why all British broadcasting company and everything like that are all making sure that that's
Hmm.
the case with Britain, which is disgusting and genocidal. But I mean, that's just part of it, right? And we see this all the time. And like, this actually is a bigger issue, not just with like games, but actually with the federal government in general, because billions of dollars get spent by various federal agencies on consultancy because they can't do things themselves. So they have to outsource billions of dollars in RFPs and consultancy contracts in order to do basic tasks and functions, in order to how make things work and to be streamlined and to be managed. So like places like McKinsey get spent millions, if not billions of dollars a year in federal contracts to do things and how they run it. And that's a terrifying thing to consider when we talk about like the managerial state and the revolution and things like that. We never consider that there's just an army of nameless consultants, these yes men in suits. And they don't work for the feds. They're just contractors. They're just consultants. And we don't have anything like that on the right. Well, we do, but it's like, 1,000,000 to 1 in terms of money and financing. So it's just a huge side thing that we never talk about. And this is because I think that ideology, or whatever, as Kirk might say, would allow you to sort of just have these blinders where you have answers to everything. But that's just the way that it is these days.
Yeah. Yeah. But so people were freaking out though. It's just that I don't know, it seems the toleration of it. And by the way, we have a pretty good number of viewers, I think, because we're getting a lot of traffic on Twitter, which explains why um there's not as many super chats yet. But that's really does suck. You get the viewership of Twitter, but not like the monetization of YouTube. Maybe could Elon have some kind of monetization scheme? Who knows? Maybe one day. But in terms of super chats, maybe Elon will have
Dear God, 288 people plus on Twitter. Wow, that's
yeah.
awesome.
Well, it's a slow day for other Twitter Spaces. So, but yeah. So it's a standard take, but um, I don't know. It's really crazy how the toleration of the way that things have gone. It seems like the 2010s, like immediately after Gamergate, there was a consensus that people like Anita really did win. That game companies could do whatever they want, and the people running them, again, because this is basic replacement theory. Um, this is what Daddy Jim explained back in like way back, and I think the video came out in 2019 or 2018. He had this thing called replacement theory. I wanted to write something about it, where essentially you have a community of people that enjoy a particular intellectual property, namely video games. That community slowly will get subverted by far left agents, and eventually the noise that they generate by being boosted from the outside of that community by other ideologues, right, and activist groups. The noise that they generate will then in turn be heard by video game companies who have these consulting firms, who have a lot of pull with PR management and basic corporate woke capital Americana, that they will listen to this supplicant or replacement group of people, and therefore that entire video game franchise or intellectual property or whatever popular media that nerds are into, that they will then get subverted by people that didn't initially like the video game or like the franchise or like the comic book anyways. And so now a lot of these corporations, they're forced to essentially replace their own audience with this other, appealing to these other group of people. And Anita Sarkeesian was like the pinnacle of Gamergate for a reason, because I think, like, I remember Sargon, he would play that one video over and over again back in the day where she basically admitted that she really doesn't play video games. It doesn't really matter. And then, I remember her ex-husband, Jonathan McIntosh, had these videos that would get millions of views. And one of them was about, I can't say it for YouTube, RPing on graping in prison and men. But the whole video wasn't really about men. It was about, trans people and Yeah, so it was sort of like that. They give you a little kernel of truth and then they run with it. So they'll give you a substantial critique of video games, and they'll use that as a way to inflict their own narrative. This is it's a pretty basic sort of Gramscian march through the institutions. But at the end
Yeah.
of the day, it's like, I'll give you a good example. There's this video by some woman bread tuber that only puts out like a video every few months because they don't have a reason to put out any videos, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was about grifters.
Well, they got to wait on that federal seed money to come in through all the various.
Exactly. And then I like discovered that she had this 2-part video where like both of them were like 20 minutes calling Joseph Campbell a fascist, and Joseph Campbell was a fan of the Austrian painter and all this crap. And it's like, who cares, right? Anything that appeals to a very primordial part of the human has to be denigrated as fascism. But she had this video about these homesteader grifters that are basically slumlords, but it's like, instead of like a scummy apartment, it's like a cabin with like no amenities. It's like, okay, fine, that's a valid critique. There is a lot of grifters and people that do the homesteading thing that don't know what they're doing, people that are doing van life and don't know what they're doing. And it's like, okay, that's a valid critique of what's going on in an online marketplace, right? But then, of course, it's a whole excuse to bash ruralites and people that have conservative and right-wing leanings that do want to go on a homestead. And it's like, you can tell that's the whole point, right? The whole point isn't to critique grifters. The whole point is to critique the lifestyle in general. And that's what they did with video games. And I think people now are coming into the fold and they're realizing how sad and pathetic the whole like Anita doing her own like birthday wedding thing on her own is. And no, it wasn't Maggie Mayfish, it was someone else. But Maggie Mayfish has done some videos of that nature. I remember I watched this one video about millennial humor that she did, and this other one about like van life people that subject their kids to it. And that's fine, right? But you have to realize that their their ideological priors are the whole point of that. It isn't really about critiquing grifters. It's about critiquing people that are genuine homesteaders, people that are like ruralites or whatever. And of course, these people, they're all yimbies. Yes, in my backyard. And they're like, a bunch of deranged
If you really want to like incur massive psychic damage on your soul,
type
go
in
look up
Yimby in Twitter.
Yeah, type in Yimby in the search bar and you will see unfathomable horrors beyond your comprehension.
These people have talked about starving people that live in rural areas into cities the way that the indigenous people were starved into reservations. Like, I'm not joking. They tweet about this and they get thousands of likes on, and they have videos on TikTok where they talk about their deranged social policies. But notice how when it comes to having newer forms of urbanism, they never like really address like what's driving the denigration of urban centers, right? Like they'll never touch like immigration or whatever, right? So anyways, yes, exactly, reverse Khmer Rouge thick Mac, exactly. But anyways, did you want to talk about the Gamergate? I know people want us to talk about it, but I guess
I mean, there's not much to talk about.
Not much to talk about.
I feel like I gave a good rant at the beginning. I feel like we
Mhm.
have to endure one of the exes of Elon Musk now.
Well, yeah, Elon Musk. Oh, that's another thing I wanted to talk about. Elon Musk has been open to a lot of discourse. We didn't talk about it last week.
He retweeted an old Frogwave tweet.
Yeah, yeah, an old Frogwave. Yeah. By the way, Frogwave is still around. He's a mutual of mine, but he has a new account. So shout out to Frogwave. He's an OG. But I wanted to talk about, because last week we didn't address it because it happened like right at the end on Thursday, like right at the end of the Digital Archipelago, or it happened on Friday. But the situation with what's his name in the UK,
Sam Melia.
Sam Melia, right? Yeah, he's married to Laura Towler, right?
Yes.
So Sam Melia is going to. Oh, he deleted it. Oh, I guess Musk PR team got to him. Oh no,
pussy.
But yeah, Sam Melia, he unfortunately
2 years in prison.
He might get out in 8 months, but 2 years symbolically though, 2 years in prison for and you have to keep this in mind, okay? Let's just say
it wasn't the law that he broke. The judge
yes.
literally just had to come up with some mental gymnastics for intent.
Yes. Yeah. And so, but let's preface with saying that whatever you think about Patriotic Alternative and their tactics, the stickers that they were posting are very innocuous. I think one of them was just like, it's okay to be, I know it's like become a hate symbol
Well, one of them
because
was,
of,
"It's okay to be white, reject
yes,
white guilt, we'll be a minority in our homeland by
yeah.
2066."
I
Like,
believe it also post immigration statistics in one of them
yeah,
as
I
well.
mean,
Yeah.
well, I guess what you would call quote unquote hate facts on Twitter,
Yeah, hate
right?
facts. Yeah.
Despite the fact that nothing in those statements are wrong, and they're all
Right.
correct statements about what's going on in the British Isles across the pond. And I mean, and again, Morgoth did a quick little rant on his Substack about it, where he basically had said, as a guy who lives in that area, not where Sam lives specifically, but just, under the jurisdiction of His Majesty's government, what do you do in that instance other than seriously wonder how much of your own world and life is going to be affected by what you say on a blog post or on a video? And I mean, like, hope not hate goes after him all the time. Thank God he has never been doxxed, and I pray that he never will be. Because I
Hmm.
mean, how many people would cheer on, everyone's favorite essayist going to prison for what he believes in? And I mean, that's
Hmm.
just the state of how things are going um overseas. And I mean, there was a
Well, I
Blaze
might go
journal.
to prison one day here in
That is
Canada.
true.
So
Canada's got the online harms bill. If that
yeah,
passes, then Canada Geo might go to jail. We'll have to definitely smuggle his ass here to the United States sooner rather than later.
I'll marry my GF and I'll claim political asylum in
There
America.
we
So
go.
I
There we
don't, to quote Ethan Ralph, I don't scare me. Yeah, but I don't really like. I think if you do any IRL activism, I don't go to any
I
rallies.
mean, that, yeah, that's
I
the
didn't even
risk
go to
though
the
that you
trucker
carry.
rally. Yeah, so but no, but what I was gonna say, Prude, is that whatever you think of Patriarchal Alternative, whatever you think of Laura Towler or Sam Milley, like, okay, fine, if you have criticisms of their tactics, but the reality is that what they were doing was harmless. Uh, they themselves, the justification by the judge was insane, by the way, like total anarcho tyranny, because you have to realize one thing: the stickers they posted was deemed legal by the same judiciary. So the judge literally had to invent, like you were saying, an excuse that um it was like intimidation to like it was intimidation in immigrant communities by posting statistics of immigrate. Like, it's literally insane. It's insane. You could hate him, you could hate Mark Collette, you could hate Laura Towler, but the reality is that even if you don't like these people, you realize, and I mean, I have my criticisms of them, whatever, right? On an intellectual level or in terms of tactics, but it's like at the end of the day, this is insanity. And the leftoids, they really don't care because it's getting one of them. So that whole like excuse that a lot of boomers have about um well, it could be used against them one day. They don't care. And we don't live in that world, right? It's sort of like what Oren says. I'll never forget this for as long as I live. I remember Oren replied to what's her name? Ann Coulter one time. And Ann Coulter said, "You mean to tell me that the only thing the leftists you learned from the Trump trial isn't like the denigration of civil society, but rather they could punish their enemies through the judiciary?" And Orrin McIntyre quote tweeted her. He said, "Exactly. Yes, that's what they learned." Right? So let's not kid ourselves. People are celebrating this. And people would probably celebrate if Morgoth ever, God forbid, gets doxxed, right? And Morgoth is a good friend of both of us. And, it's like I'm sure people would celebrate if I went to the Human Rights Commission here in Canada, right? But it's like the point being is that you could disagree with their tactics, you could disagree with their activism, or you could even disagree with their ideas, right? But it's like it's insanity and it's a travesty. And I am very glad that a lot of people, even like moderate normie cons that probably don't agree with like Mark Gillette or whoever, or Roller Towler, like even like normie cons are saying like, "Wow, this is insanity," and really like the stickers they posted, is it that offensive? Like this is how they work because the activist groups and these networked like people like the SPLC and the ADL and so forth, what they do is they take innocuous things that even like, ship posters have memed on over the years, and they create an aura of wrong think and hate and quote unquote radicalization around it. Even like common words that Christians use in liturgy is on the ADL hate list of phrases, right? And so what they do is that because they have this aura of legitimacy, even though they are deranged ideologues, whether it be Antifa groups, whether it be the SPLC itself, which is a deranged ideological leftist organization, because they have a precedent of legitimacy, that means that corporations and government bodies will essentially take their lead. So if you have that mark of Cain on you, if you have that scarlet letter that you have an SPLC or an ADL hate list article, then it's like you're done. You know what I mean? And it means that corporations will treat you accordingly. Even if you denounce everything, they will never leave you. Like I wore Patrick Casey. One article got his YouTube pulled by in Media Matters. Now we know Media Matters is like aren't they like a Soros funded operation or whatever? But the point being is that they're not viewed through the lens of an ideological organization, the way that Claremont is viewed as one, the way that I'm sure Trump has funding packs or whatever, or the way that even like approaching normal conservative institutions like the Blaze or whatever, they're viewed as ideological. But when it comes to these activist NGO type of groups, they don't have that same thing. They're viewed as being impartial, and they're viewed as being legitimate activist groups. And therefore they could say whatever. They could come up with whatever deranged lies. And it's oh, there you go, Prude. There's what's that support? What do you got there, Prude?
Hold on a second.
What is that? Helldivers?
Weird. No,
yeah,
someone sent me a DM. Made a meme, something about a clip from my old stream.
Oh my
god! Which is what happens if you pay for the channel membership. It pops up, and someone sent me something.
There you go.
Yeah, that's what happens. People send me clips, and unfortunately, I'm now going to have to like block that guy because I didn't need a nice swastika being played over a stream. Anyway,
is that what they was playing?
There's a gentleman that has made a few edits of things that I really wish didn't exist, but that's life, unfortunately.
Oh, but it wasn't on this stream. It was other ones.
No. It's just I haven't ever
good.
I've never streamed with anything nasty on it. No, and it didn't show on stream. Just someone sent me something, and unfortunately, because I have OBS playing,
Prude clips with spinny wheels. So.
Yeah, someone. I really wish they wouldn't do that.
Well, no, it's because it's sort of like those like 88 fan accounts. It's sort of like, it's like someone could take that and be like, oh, see, you're enabling these people to do that. So.
Oh, I know, it's absolutely insane.
Well, I was gonna say that
it's like the Nate Hochman thing, where he did the spinny wheel edit for Ron DeSantis, which is still the funniest fucking part of the Ron DeSantis
that he didn't like,
Well, and it's funny because Nate Hochman's a Jewish guy. Like, don't tell me you don't know what the hell that is. Talking to like right wing internet anons every fucking day of the week. Like,
he knew what that was. Yeah,
you knew what that was, even if you thought. If you're gonna do that, you always have to outsource that to the anons. It's just that simple, and
exactly.
Whereas, speaking of campaigns, press S.
Well, I was gonna say, Praveen, you should be a bit more optical going forward, but
Oh, of course we should.
Yeah,
because anytime that something like that happens, or someone like replies to me in a way where I'm like, I don't think I want to deal with that, I'll happily leave.
I try to ignore. I don't like the tweet. Yeah, I don't have the heart to block people that are following me, but I just ignore.
Well, I just leave conversation, So
you do that as well.
I do that quite often because I don't like my notifications blowing up. No,
but one last thing before you go, Pro. I was going to say that.
Yeah.
Is how do you pronounce his last name? Millie or Millie?
Or do you mean Javier? Which one are we talking about? Sam or the guy
No,
from?
Sam.
Yeah, Sam Melia, I believe is how you spell.
Melia, right? Like
Yeah.
like like Milius.
Melia or Melia.
Yeah, Melia. Like one last thing about Sam Melia. So, do they have some kind of legal defense fund, or is that sort of like you'll get them on a list
I
review?
think I'd have to double check what Laura has posted, but I think that
Well,
they
you
have
buy her tea.
something.
You could you could still buy her.
I mean,
They
yeah,
have
you
a
can still
Canadian
buy.
distributor too.
Oh,
So
do you? Well, good. I
yeah,
don't. Do they have an American
I'll
one?
probably buy some. Yeah, but
If
no.
they have
But
an
one last
American
thing
one,
was
I'll happily buy that tea.
yeah, I think you could buy that in America too.
Good.
One last thing I will say is that so yeah, it's a great travesty, and our heart really goes out to Laura Towler and Sam Melia, and I think that hopefully it will be like a suspended sentence or only, but the fact that he got sentenced at all is really a travesty. But someone like H Norwood guy can go on and destroy. I mean, granted, it's like who cares because that guy was also one of these people. But the point being is that when they talk about the radicalization pipeline and stochastic terrorism and all this crap, it's like really a lot of the stuff that leftoids do will be covered for by the media and by themselves and the same people that will accuse like libs of TikTok or Kiwi Farms with easily disprovable examples about like you led to some special non-binary kid, whatever. I can't say it for YouTube. Um Meanwhile, the H Norwood guy situation, which I'm sure we'll have a few examples, a few minutes on. But what were you going to say, Prude? You wanted to bring something up?
Oh, I was just gonna say press S to spit because Nikki Haley dropped out.
Oh yeah, Nikki Haley. Yeah. I thought you wanted to talk about that. What was it called? Pleasure Land or
Oh, that whole dopamine land thing.
Dopamine Land? We'll talk about that before the
Um.
articles. But yeah, press S to spin the chat for Nikki Haley, for Nimrata Haley.
Oh, and I was
Apparently, saying her name is like dead naming her or something. Like you can't say her real name.
yeah.
I don't know.
Which, well, and it was like the eyelash show and all the other like.
Man, there's so many S's in the chat to spit on Haley.
Well, good. I'm glad that call center Hillary is finally out of the
Call
presidency.
center Hillary. That's bad. Oh my god. And Victoria Nuland.
Victoria Nuland was announced by the Secretary of State Antony Blinken that she is stepping down from her position, and this is just like days after leaving Ukraine. Like that's huge news. Like that's a huge shift in U.S. policy.
Do you think she was forced out?
I mean, for all we know, she could be promoted. We have no idea what's going to come next for her.
Yeah.
I don't know where she'll go though. I mean, she's only in her
60s.
mid-60s. Like technically that's retirement age, but for someone like that, she's got another 10, 15 years in her before she might retire.
That's middle age for a bureaucrat.
Yeah, I mean, like she's not done career-wise, and I mean, she's been there for.
Chuck Grassley will probably have a heart attack in his seat, or
well, I mean, hell, Dianne Feinstein died in office, so I mean,
yeah,
anything goes, right? With this, what's the gerontocracy? Is that the one for being ruled by the old people? Gerontocracy, yeah. I mean, anything goes.
Sclerotic Compact Magazine, sclerotic power, which is a good term, I must admit. But
yep, many such cases. But I mean, who was it? Like Cayuga's top gal, who was the one
Cayuga's top gal,
who tweeted it out when you look like this and you unironically believe PewDiePie is Hitler, maybe you shouldn't wonder why your audience drove a man to suicide. Like,
yeah,
I mean, like you look up his videos and right, like I think everyone, if you like watch game review stuff, you might listen to his like talk about why Bloodborne is great or why, Dark Souls 2 or whatever. And this is how Mahler gets a start, right? But all of a sudden, most of his videos are always like, the shitty white millennial liberal criticizing people like Sargon of Akkad or crypto fascism and how bad it is. It's, when you have a Norwood 5 and a shitty beard, there you go.
Don't you know about media literacy? Don't you know Helldivers is making fun of you? It's like, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I do, but I really don't care about your gay little opinions.
No, but about the H bomber guy. It's like what's there to talk about? But I think like Haley, well, the more meaningful conversations with the Haley and the Newland thing before we, yeah. So, but I mean, apparently Daddy Jim is going to stream about H bomber guy, because you have to realize that they were friends back in the day, and H was like a part of his crew and looked up to Daddy Jim, but Daddy Jim spurned him because Daddy Jim has no friends on the internet. Ethan, Oliver, Ralph learned that the hard way. Remember on the kill stream where Jim is like, I don't have any friends, Ethan. Like, I mean, we're acquaintances, but and that really broke. That broke H Norwood guy. That broke Ethan Ralph. That Daddy Jim was not their personal friend. He was just a guy that he streamed with, or he did, or whatever. Sorry, Prudy, go ahead. I'm not. I'm getting too carried away with that one.
Well,
yeah, Daddy Jim cups deep. Exactly. Because when Daddy Jim says out from the nest, it's all over. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, as someone who didn't watch a whole lot of kill streams, I'm glad I kind of missed out on this lore.
Yeah, it was good though. You could see like the instant moment that Ethan Ralph's heart shattered in two. So
shatters in two. Well, I mean, the other thing too is that you have the National Guard.
Like another Ralph, like Ralphie, eh? Like from The Simpsons. That's The Simpsons. Yeah, anyways.
And then, of course, you have the National Guard being deployed to subway stations in New York City for bag checks and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Working with the NYPD over things. And I mean, wasn't it just last September where basically New York City Mayor Eric Adams was just like, yeah, the city's laws were fucked because illegal migrants?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
I think they forced him to retract that statement, if I recall.
Well, I mean, like just sort of the, and I mean, I'm just noting, like I'm watching a clip from that was on Twitter from like Freedom News TV, and it's sort of like a strange post 9/11 world all over again. And I mean, it's never like we unlived the trauma of September 11th, anyways. And by trauma, I mean the reaction to the world that came afterwards. And about a year ago, I did this whole like book review stream. I think it was called The Uncertain Futures. And it was about like Islamic terrorism in the wake of September 11th and like the counterterrorism policies of the early 2000s. And the book came out in like 2004. So it's a 20-year-old book. And you're listening to people like get really concerned about like transnational terrorism and sort of the non-state actors that can receive like state-sponsored funding through normal means of financial transactions and support, which I mean, this is how you get the whole state sponsors of terrorism thing. And it's just like these guys were really seriously thinking that this was going to be the big subject matter of the future, that this was going to be the biggest national and geopolitical security concern for the next 50 years. And we're 20 years out from that. I mean, we're 23 years out, more or less, from September 11th. And we don't really think about that at all. Like I mean, at least in America, we don't, in part because we've just decided to bring them all in anyways. And we elected a guy in 2008 whose middle name was Hussein.
Which is really crazy. That's what Nightmare Vision said. Like, when you think of like the Bush era, then we elected like Barack Hussein Obama right after. It's like, that really was a sort of like a weird, like, God has a sense of humor type of thing.
Well, I mean, it also has a lot to say just about how bad like the Republican establishment, because I mean,
really
I mean 2006 is an absolute slaughter in the midterms. I mean, a lot of that is a reflection of 2005 and the response to Hurricane Katrina. Bush's numbers just go down as the war slowly begins to become more unpopular around this time frame. And of course, you have a litany of scandals that emerges out of the Bush administration that come out of this. And there's just this general feeling that we've wasted billions of dollars. We haven't gotten the guy that has been said is primarily the mastermind, which was, of course, Osama bin Laden. And then all of a sudden, like the economy goes to hell. You are spending, quote unquote, more time golfing than you are anything else.
Yeah.
Of course, media bias and such. But yeah, proper mismanagement of the economy and
alleged mastermind of
well, I mean, it's not like George W. Bush wasn't stupid, but it certainly wasn't a competent executive. Like I said this on
Right.
on D Space last night. I said Thomas 77 is right. Like the last actual executive America had was George H.W. Bush, Bush
Yeah.
41. And we haven't had a competent executive since, which is really depressing that it's been, almost 40 years and we haven't had anyone of that quality whatsoever.
Well, for however evil Herbert Walker was, like, yeah, he was
Well,
pretty
yeah, but I mean,
competent.
like,
Yeah.
Herbert Walker wasn't someone you'd fuck with either. I mean, vice president for 8 years, ambassador to the United Nations, former head of the
CIA director.
CIA director,
Yeah.
who was still getting intelligence briefings daily, more or less until the day he died. I mean, to a point where he was like hospitalized and not really non-compos mentis at a certain point. So I mean,
Mhm.
even after his presidency, I mean, the guy was still getting intelligence, as all presidents do, or ex-presidents do, or former presidents do. And it's sort of insane to consider that, especially that we haven't had anyone of that competency level in so many years. So now that you've had like a big class of Cold Warriors be phased out of the State Department and sort of the foreign policy apparatus, you have a lot of these sort of liberal hegemonic ideologues that are telling you like this is the way to go forward and this is the way to
That was
do
brought in
things.
during the Obama years. A lot of them came from the Clinton
Well, a lot of
years
it
as
comes
well.
from Clinton, but I mean, like, there's a historian. His name's like John G. Eikenberry, and he's
Oh my God! I had to read his book, Liberal Leviathan, in school.
it's there's some good things that you can take out of that. It's not the world's
Mm,
best text, but I mean, the main
no.
thing, of course, is his conceptual claim of liberal hegemony.
Yes.
And that's sort of been the preeminent description of American foreign policy since the end of the Second World War, and that the idea of using liberal hegemony to secure unipolarity really doesn't get solidified until Bush Jr.
Oh yeah.
Because after 9/11, the neocons are like, okay, well, we're just going to do what we need to do and secure it by force, and we have the power projection capabilities to do it. And then we kind of get bogged down and we don't leave. And there's this great article in the American Affairs Journal that's like 4 years old at this point called Data Driven Defeat.
Mhm.
And you can take whatever term about the word data driven that you want. But I mean, basically, like no goals, no win condition, constant charts and strategies about how things are to flow and where things are going to go there. And this is how we're going to do things. Here are the rules of engagement that aren't really rules. They're more like things that you can't do to defend yourself. And there was no win condition that had been established by Bush, Obama, or really Trump. Trump wanted to get out, and I think that he was securing that towards the end of his term. And then, of course, the disastrous exit out of Afghanistan and under the Biden administration, to which the guy who was responsible for that is the person replacing Victoria Nuland. So remember, kids, in the government, you can fail upward and fuck up really bad.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really an indictment of how things are. It's incredible. But it's like yeah, sorry, I'm just giving the entropy link to for the Twitter people. Donate for super chats. No, but I was going to say that in terms of competence, the competency crisis of government, you really do see sort of a different flavor of that ideological shift between those years because I mean, I wonder if there's any sort of books or whatever about the George Herbert Walker attitude towards the Clinton administration, for example, because I imagine, like much like Obama still taking briefings during Trump, that Herbert Walker would still be in the know during Clinton, obviously, even though he stepped down or he didn't pursue a second term. So I wonder, like, if he was behind a lot of those things that happened during Clinton, especially domestically, or that was purely the Clintonista ideologues going after the right wing at that time. And then Obama sort of fulfilled that project, at least culturally. But then, Obama had this whole like the wars were still going on, but he pivoted towards, did he have like a pivot towards Asia or whatever? And
Obama, yeah, in 2011, he had his pivot to Asia.
yeah, but nobody remembers that a lot. It's sort of like
Which is really
forgotten.
unfortunate because
Yeah.
I mean, Trans-Pacific Partnership and things like that. But I mean, that was probably one of the few competent things of the Obama foreign policy was redirecting American attention and investment towards Asia. And I mean, this had
Yeah.
led to a lot of renewed investment in things like the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, trying to maybe and this is still an ongoing struggle with American foreign policy about like trying to renormalize and strengthen ties between the United States and Vietnam, which of course holds a strategic purpose because in the late 1970s, I think it's 1979, that China and I want to say it's Vietnam that goes, not Vietnam. It might have been. They had a war in which China did not do particularly well.
Oh, against Vietnam, right after the Vietnam War with America. Yeah.
Yeah, and
The Viets, yeah, they went to war with China.
they did very well. The Vietnamese did well.
Yeah.
And I mean, and this happens all the time when like a well-tested military force that has been fighting for years. I mean, considering that
decades at that point.
Well, decades at that point. I mean, between with the French Indochina to the United States military, like they're going to do fine, and to which they bloody China's nose, and it's not declared a loss. It's not declared a win either. And that's sort of the last time that China's military has really tested anything. They've been doing a lot more domestic stuff. I mean, you go back maybe 10, 15 years, you'd see a lot of articles about like Islamic extremism in China and a lot of like stabbing attacks and a lot of major Chinese subways and rail systems. And then all of a sudden the Chinese kind of realized, hey, what if we just like sequestered these people in a far off province and built camps? And that's more or less what they've done, which has been a leverage point for the United States with its human rights claims, which is funny because Xinjiang borders Afghanistan. You have the Wakhan corridor there, and that corridor is filled with other groups like, like the Turkmenistan, like Islamic militant groups and things like that. And the Taliban used to run a lot of guns and drugs and other stuff through there. So, I mean, it's an interesting bit of just old geopolitics that no one pays attention to anymore, which is really depressing because like whatever the future of Afghanistan has, I mean, China is going to be very much integrated into it. And I mean, the Taliban government's already said that they look forward to welcoming in Chinese investment and having something similar to the Pakistan, the Chinese Pakistan like economic corridor and things like that. Because I mean, their goal would be for them to move further, well, in China's case, further westward into the Middle East and Eurasia. And I mean, they've done some of that already with a lot of rail and infrastructure investment, in which that's sort of been the underlying agreement between Russia and China, right? Is that we'll do the soft power stuff, you provide security, which leads to the sort of nice partnership, but also very tense one between Russia and China, even to this day. But that's this is stuff that I haven't done a lot of reading on in the last 6 months or so. I haven't covered Geopol in a while, and much to the dismay of half my audience on my subscriber list.
Well, yeah, the fact that like most of their neighbors hate them, though, that's because there's a lot of entry points into China, whether it be, through that corridor going into the Middle East or through Russia, the Eurasian steppe, and it's very, there is, in all their Asian neighbors, India, it's like they do not particularly like the Chinese. So they're up against, a multi-front scenario. But of course, all of their partners in the BRIC nations has really solidified their ability to geopolitically maneuver. And, well, we'll see what happens because, but the Nuland thing is interesting because who knows what's going to happen. I mean, are they going to pull a plug? They're going to put sort of like more or less put the Ukrainian situation away. Are they going to pivot just to the Middle East? You never know, right? It's all up in the air. I mean, for it being an election year, it kind of doesn't feel like an election year because I remember around this time in 2016, for instance, people were ramping up around this time. And now that Nikki Haley's gone and Trump is clearly the Republican nominee, maybe things might cook up in the next month as we go into the summer, but it's weird feeling. It doesn't feel like an American election year.
Well, and the same thing too, right? Is that it's also, to go back to the beginning with that sort of eternal present type deal. Like everything is 2014. There's still a war in Ukraine, just like 2014. We're now getting the movement of what led to the sort of Trump meme magic energy of 2016. We're there as well, right? Like everyone knows that Trump is the heir apparent, to a point where even Congress has voted to pass bills and legislation to say that, like, hey, you can't pull out of NATO without congressional approval. Otherwise, we can impeach you for it. Or, you got to fund Ukraine whether you like it or not, or we'll impeach you for it. Like all these things that are being done to prepare, just like they did in 2016, all of the stumbling blocks necessary to
sanitize his
yeah,
administration.
to sabotage him at all costs.
Mhm.
And I mean, even
Well,
if you've got
McConnell supported him allegedly.
yeah, well, no, McConnell
McConnell
did. McConnell,
endorsed
who has announced that he is stepping down from Senate Republican leadership, which makes him the longest Republican
Mhm.
senator to hold that position for the party. And all of the options to replace him are shitty. McConnell, Thune, or not? Yeah, McConnell would be replaced either by, like, I'm sure Senator Thune or Senator Cornyn from Texas. They're
Ugh,
both awful and arguably worse than McConnell.
yeah.
There was like some National Review guy, I think it was the baseball guy, and he was just like, "You're gonna miss McConnell when he's gone," and I'm like, I might actually agree with you, despite having nothing in common with you ideologically, because I think that the replacements are going to be just as worse. But that doesn't
Well, same with
happen.
Newland. The replacements will be.
Oh,
Well,
I'm
I
sure.
shouldn't say that. Yeah.
Well, we don't know.
No.
We don't know because it could be someone even more incompetent that increases the risk of escalation. We have no
Yeah.
idea what is coming next. I mean, this is the administration, right, where Biden says he's going to be airlifting and dropping supplies to aid the Ukrainians, and then instantly that's being transitioned to, oh, he meant Gaza, to where you have all
Yeah.
those videos of Palestinians being upset that we're dropping MREs over there and that they're not halal and things like that. And apparently at the State of the Union tonight, the State of the Union is happening this evening. I know it's not, it's sort of it's sort of one of those who cares sort of ceremonial events with this administration.
Can
But
Biden
apparently
even talk?
that's
Is
the
this,
real question. I want to
know?
be a fly in the wall to know what drugs they've put into Mr. Joe Biden. And I want to be a fly on the wall so I can hear that list of drugs so I can try them out myself.
Yeah.
But the fun thing will be he did announce that apparently he's going to be opening an emergency port into Gaza to flow aid in. So we give billions of dollars of aid to Israel, but now we're
To
also
bomb
using
them, but
to bomb, yeah, the Hamas
yeah.
and the Palestinians. But now also we're opening a port to flow through emergency aid to bypass the Israelis. It has been interesting. I mean, like Barack Obama had his like huge disagreements, famously with Benjamin Netanyahu, and was not the most pro-Zionist or pro-Jewish president in recent memory. But I mean, this one, in
No.
terms of policy, is probably the worst on the whole sort of Zionism or Israel question when it comes to U.S. foreign policy, despite there
Trump
being.
would even have much more tact when it comes to the optics of it. You know?
Well, I mean, Trump's just more of Trump's more of a Zionist on this issue, at least politically speaking.
No, but in terms of like if he won re-election, I mean, and this war happened,
yeah,
who
there would
knows?
be there. Well, I think you would see a return to the rah Israel's our greatest ally kind of stuff that we haven't seen as of late. I mean, Patrick McFarlane put out an article with like the Libertarian Institute that was just basically the anti-woke Zionist pipeline, and it was all your usual suspects from Chaya Ratchik, libs of TikTok, to Peterson, to Cernovich, and everyone. It's just like, yeah, all these anti-wokesters. I mean, like as soon as like something happens, like bam, they're ready to defend this and do that and hate cancel speech and things like that matter. It doesn't matter if you're like Patrick McFarlane or not. It doesn't matter if you like libertarians or not. It's interesting to see what kind of articles get published these days. And that's sort of the world that we're living in now. But I mean, okay, great. You're going to open up a port there. Any territory, I mean, this only prolongs the conflict. I mean, anytime that a castle or a village or a people are under siege, the aid always goes to in the garrison. You know, they go to fighters.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like historically in militarily, that's just accurate. Aid is going to go to those who are fighting or able to fight. So I just see that all that we're doing is extending this conflict. Although, I mean, of course, it doesn't seem like the Israelis have a problem with that because, I mean, they just, as they always do, it's more of an indiscriminate ethnic thing. And if you're going to open up a port, my immediate concern is more Goth's Law, which is anytime that there is a geopolitical conflict in the Middle East, that means more non-Europeans flood Europe and the West. So I imagine that port might be used to flood in Palestinians to Europe or America or Canada.
No, but that's what I mean. Like the optics of it are absolutely horrendous because it means that the American government has no control over, you know, anything that happens, and so they have to like make concessions to be like, oh, we know that, you know, you're getting stuff I can't say on YouTube against the Palestinians.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, but we can give you aid though. it's sort of like, well, we can't. So, it's sort of like the post-Cold War consensus of the global policeman solving problems the hard way. That's sort of gone. And then when it comes to, you know, different groups with different victimology complexes, it's like, oh, okay, we can't do anything about it, but we can provide some paltry aid of the situation. I don't know. Like, I mean, that's what I mean by Trump. I think, even though it would be, it's almost like as if the roles were reversed in some ways, where with Biden and the Democrat Party, they have to downplay the sort of like pro-Israel thing for their constituents. But when it comes to material power and the actual actions of what's going on, it's like the Israelis are more or less doing whatever they want. Whereas with Trump, I think what would happen, and again, maybe because we're blinded by, the whole like MAGA thing, he would be very much like the open, overt, rah, Benjamin Netanyahu's my friend, sort of that type of thing. But I think behind the scenes, Trump would at least acknowledge that he has to be more tactical and operate with more gravitas geopolitically, because it seemed like, apart from like certain stunts he did, like redacting Soleimani and all that, Trump was very tactical politically. I'm sorry, geopolitically, the way that Richard Nixon was with ending the Vietnam War. And so I think he would probably want to pursue an agreement, and he would say, like, but in the face of it, he would be very much pro-Israel and very pro-Likud and whatnot. But behind the scenes, he probably would have to do the hard and dirty work of actually negotiating. At least I would hope so. And if he gets reelected, I mean, whatever ends this conflict, and same with Ukraine, whatever ends the conflict sooner would be better. And I think Trump recognizes that, especially when it comes to Ukraine. No doubt Trump would want to basically tell the Ukrainians to go to the negotiating table. That's a given, right? He even said that. He goes, didn't he say, like, in the first month of his presidency, his second term, that he would end the Ukrainian conflict or something like that?
I mean, he had said that he would end the war in 24 hours, which was the claim he made. Which I mean, even if he wants,
which is not going to be real.
No, of course not, right? But like, again, he obviously is just aware that this war is vastly unpopular. We've spent billions of dollars on it. All that we have done is,
and the Gaza war even more vastly unpopular.
Well, yeah.
Let's face it. Yeah. Well,
I haven't actually checked I haven't checked polling as to how the war is doing amongst, like, for instance, like white evangelical voters, which typically have a more dispensationalist view, and that's sort of the Republican base, and where a lot of dollars get funded into. And I mean, like, Whitney Webb wrote this article over a year ago now about, like, the I believe what the article is called again specifically, the untold story of Christian Zionism's rise to power in the United States, and that was and she had written this a while ago, but. Basically, I mean, even when you had people like Mike Pompeo, former CIA, former congressman, and then Secretary of State towards the end of his term, basically, his policy towards the Middle East has got this dispensationalist, like, bring about the end time. It's very eschatological rather than anything that is, like, objective based. That I don't want to have come back to the United States at all. I mean, Jared Kushner had said he's not coming back, which is, I would argue, a pretty good thing. In the same way, I don't know if Mike Pompeo is going to return, but also Pompeo has lost a shit ton of weight, and I imagine that, I thought for a while he might be a dark horse Republican nominee or running for the presidency, which he didn't.
Well, didn't he, like, openly flout Trump's authority, or?
I think Pompeo was more of a Trump guy than.
The other one. Who was the one that stabbed Trump in the back? Which general? I forget.
It was Mark Milley.
No, I know Milley. No, but he was overtly that. But
Mattis did. Mattis had always considered, what do we do in case this guy does something we don't want him to do? Which, I mean, again, right? Like, they're just openly plotting against the president of the United States. There's a word for that. It's called treason, but
Yeah, well, no, but I mean, Milley was overt, but there were even Republican. There was a lot. Most Republicans. Not most.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, most
the inner circle went along with it.
They were okay with the status quo. I mean, like, and when he got elected, like, I was in college when he got elected, and I was really surprised that. And I mean, initially Trump wasn't my guy. I was still in my libertarian-esque leanings at the time, and Paul was my guy. I phone banked for him. You know, I had given the campaign some money from when I was working, but and I thought, well, yeah, Trump gets it in, and he wants to break the Republican orthodoxy. Like, I just imagine that Congress will contain him, you know, and he'll stay on message. And then I learned that very quickly, oh, the establishment, and it must be destroyed at all costs, and whatever must be done, you know, GOP
Yeah.
delenda est. And so, you know, I voted for him just to say, hey, why not? This is better than Hillary Clinton any day of the week. 2020, I was like, I hate all these people with a fiery passion. May they all be thrown viscerally into the sun. So we're going to vote for Donald Trump again. And I voted for him on Super Tuesday. I said privately to Orrin I wasn't going to announce that I voted, but I did vote in the primaries on Super Tuesday just the other day here in Texas. Had a good time voting on some fun issues. My mom had called me like because I like logged off from work, and then she calls me as she gets off work, and she's like, hey, all these propositions sound really secessionist. How did you vote on them? And I was like, well, Mom, what time do you think it is? You know, like politically speaking.
But that's insane. They want to say that like if Trump doesn't want to fund Ukraine, that they're going to impeach him. Is that true? Or is that
yeah, no, this was a piece of legislation. Let me pull it up for you.
absolutely insane?
Trump can't pull out of. Let me see here. Yeah, so also the latest thing that was talking about with Ukraine was about the was trying to do it as a loan rather than a actual straight up giving them billions in aid. Law to stay in. But yeah, I mean,
too.
Oh yeah, so yeah, there it was. Yeah, it was from earlier last December. Congress approves a bill barring any president from unilaterally withdrawing from NATO, and this was spearheaded by Senators Tim Kaine, former vice presidential candidate in 2016, and Senator Marco Rubio of Florida.
Marco Rubio, remember Little Rubio?
Little Marco, Little Marco,
Little Marco. Yeah, that's crazy. That's but that's clearly a way of sanitizing any possible Trump leeway on foreign policy. But that's insane. It's insane, by the way. That's
well, and I wonder how much
insane.
of that is because I mean, there's been a lot of talk for the last several years. I mean, even before Trump got elected during the Obama administration about this whole conceptualization of like European defense autonomy, like either having like a European Union army or a collective sort of supranational organization similar to NATO that doesn't have the United States in order to assert European interests. And this is, of course, being spearheaded and talked about at the time by the two sort of leading political powerhouses on the continent, Germany and France. This is what Merkel and Macron would talk a lot about before Merkel would step down. And it's just kind of particularly interesting with respects to, I mean, you know, Macron gave a speech earlier yesterday or so about all this. And there wasn't really anything about it. Like he wanted to give you a red line in the sand, but he wasn't sure if he could. And it's just sort of the strange particular area where Europe isn't in a position to, I mean, doesn't invest in its military in the same way we do. I mean, one only just has to look at like the U.S. contributions to NATO to sort of like tell you that even trying to get to the 2% GDP spending goals per defense has been a pain in the ass.
It's impossible.
Well, no, I mean, Trump did a lot actually to get that to happen. And then, of course, the United States does a lot to like prop up Poland, which, of course, now with their
you have to pay the price now.
Well, yeah, because I mean, Donald Tusk is in office, and you've got the husband to Anne Applebaum as the new foreign minister.
Really?
Yeah, Radoslav Sikorski's there.
Oh my god!
The guy who tweeted
see more of our. I mean, there's already Polish troops in Ukraine, but you might. Who knows, man? That's crazy.
This is the guy that said thank you, USA.
She's an insane Russophobe. That's.
I mean, it's just, well, I wonder why.
Well, you know, I mean.
Yeah, I know.
But anyways, no, but like her husband is equally like.
Well, he was the one that did the whole thank you, USA thing when the Nord Stream 2 pipeline was sabotaged. He took a picture of like the waters and the bubbling and the explosion. He's like, thank you, USA. And it's like, man, kind of a weird flex to know that like we're just openly conducting this war against a foreign power without a formal declaration, and that we're doing all these things. In any other rational position, that would be like good casus belli for anyone to just be like, all right, let's do it. But I mean, there's the whole Article 5 thing, which no one wants to get involved with. less tactical nuclear weapons are used. But we've been talking about like the news shit for way too long. Do you want to get to what we had planned?
Yeah, we'll get to it. But one last, because it reminded me of the court decision of the unanimous decision allowing Trump to run in different states. David French in what was it in Atlantic about, what was his article about something about like this is a
there's
betrayal.
this, yeah. Oh well, I mean, then you had like the whole Keith Olbermann thing too.
Yeah.
Keith Olbermann, the PP piss boy, who is just like that. Those aren't tears, that's year, and you bathe in that, you fascist. And it's just like, man, like, what is it with these people having like the most depraved sexual thoughts when it comes to their political enemies? Like, I hate to take the whole libertine little take where everything is just some sort of like grotesque like sex play subconsciously. It's very Freudian in my opinion. I don't think that's always
#sexlectics.
I don't know if I agree with that 100% all the time, but I mean,
there's okay. This is what the headline was.
Yeah,
in the New York Times, David French, supposedly still a conservative, the Supreme Court
supposedly it's still.
Yeah, the
it's
Supreme
supposedly
Court,
still an evangelical too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. The Supreme Court just erased part of the Constitution. That's that's like a level of insane hysterics. Like, what's his I didn't even read the article. What's his justification that because they allowed Trump to run in a clearly activist judge decision in Colorado and elsewhere, that like even like the most deranged libs on the Supreme Court, like Kagan and Contagious Jackson.
I have no idea how to pronounce
and
it.
Sotomayor, that even they voted with it. They voted with Clarence Thomas and Roberts and Kavanaugh. And of course, Comey Barrett sided with the lib opinion, but that's can you imagine that? Like a liberal, a libtard by any other metric besides being pro-life? Yeah.
Wow.
That was.
I mean, they always turn into
Trump.
Well, I mean, they turn into swing votes too. I mean, this is the same thing with Sandra Day O'Connor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Sandra Day O'Connor. Yeah.
I wouldn't. Trump, if you're going to get another Supreme Court nomination, which odds are you will, like if you get Coney Island Barrett.
Coney Island Barrett.
But I mean, like Trump, if you get in and you have to replace Clarence Thomas, because God knows that he'll probably retire if you win re-election.
Mm-hmm.
Do not replace him with a woman. That's all I ask. You need to find someone 10 times more right-wing than Clarence Thomas to replace Clarence Thomas. I want like the angry Asian incel Clarence Thomas replacement. I want like just the biggest woman-hating person on earth. Like I want a Korean immigrant who hates women. I want him in there. I say this all tongue-in-cheek. I don't want that. I would prefer a nice, well-established white male legal scholar, jurist, judge. If you find him, put him in there.
Or you could find a base black man like Robinson. What's his Mark Robinson?
Mark Robinson.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
He is beyond he's beyond entertaining, I like how Zero HP Lovecraft did the whole white heaven from the Docs bit with him.
Yeah.
See, every opinion that Zero HP would put on there, Capitalissimo, would just be like, my fellow justices need to lose weight. No, Robert Barnes. No.
He's all right. I like him because of his Duran appearances, but did he like debate Nick Fuentes about?
He did over the phrase.
Yeah.
No, it was mainly over Israel and the claim of quote Islamofascism, which is like a nice throwback to like 2002.
That's
remember
Islamofascism?
You remember Bill Kristol telling you that this is the new axis of evil? Everything is, again, this goes back to Paul Gottfried's anti-fascism course for Crusade. A new axis of evil, Islamofascism. Not everything is World War II, but we're still haunted by the specter of not Marx, but someone else.
Yeah, I can't believe you guys are giving entropy. I can't believe this. What's with entropy?
Sorry, Derrida.
Yeah, sorry, Derrida. It's the specter. Yeah, the specter of fascism.
It's the specter of Hitler, not Marx.
Oh boy. But yeah, need those super chats. Go to Entropy. It's the pinned comment. Or if you're coming here from Twitter, it's in the comments.
You have almost 1,000 people watching on Twitter.
Yeah, over 1,000 people. I can't believe that. What are you people doing on Twitter? I guess nobody else is streaming. No other big caller like Mario Nafal is streaming.
He is actually. He was talking about AI earlier. There was an AI town hall. I only know because Meta Prime was speaking in it.
Oh my god. I can't stand some of those bigger Twitter spaces, but anyways, yeah. So apparently, to David French, democracy and the Constitution is done for because of Donald J. Trump and the Supreme Court, which is really funny. Saying that the Supreme Court is unconstitutional, you probably could make an argument for that, but that unelected bureaucrat judges can just determine, but when it affects them, though, when it affects, that's how it works in politics. But anyways, let's get on. Do you want to do? Since all the Twitter people will probably drop out when we start talking about artwork, do you want to do the Grimez thread first and Gemini AI, and then we'll get to the...
Sure, let's do that. This is another woman I have blocked on Twitter.com.
Why, though?
I block most women.
She's a brilliant musician.
I block most women.
I know you do, but let's go to... it's up there. I have the Entropy link there, too, but maybe I'll... All right, let's see. Screen share. Need those super chats, all that good stuff. Go to Entropy. Is it this one? Yes, here we go. All right, Grimez. She said this about I'm actually I could actually probably talk to Grimez one day if Default invites her on the computer room, but we'll see what happens. I actually do like Grimez. I know she says kind of like some kind of cringe stuff once in a while, but I think she's very creative, intelligent, and she's a nice woman. And of course, she has sired 2 of Elon Musk's children, so can't be that bad. Anyways, I'm retracting my statement about the Gemini art disaster. And so, for those who don't know Gemini art, well, pretty much everybody knows about the Gemini thing, right, Prude?
Well, yeah, and they only got in trouble because apparently mid-century Germans were depicted as black people.
Oh my god. I'm retracting my statement about the Gemini art disaster. It is in fact a masterpiece of performance art, even if unintentional. True gain of function art. Art is a virus, unthinkable, unintentional, and contagious. So basically, that's her sort of view of her pro AI art being something as like a contagion. Well, not all of them.
Something that is parallel to biology.
Something that is parallel to biology outside of human hands, but also within human hands, which is very funny how viruses tend to work that, especially mimetic contagions. Offensive to all, comforting to none. So totally divorced from meaning, intention, desire, and humanity that it's accidentally a conceptual masterpiece. So, of course, for those who don't know, in the fine art world for many generations now, there's always been this obsession with divorcing the work of art from the artist, using automatic processes, using the unconscious, using materials that don't appear as if they're by human hands. A lot of like the minimalists of the 70s and 80s after the avant-garde would do this stuff, like Carl Andre, like a block of concrete is a piece of artwork and so forth. A perfect example of headless runaway bureaucracy and the worst tendencies of capitalism. An unabashed simulacra of activism. The shining star of corporate surrealism. Extremely underrated genre, by the way. The supreme goal of the artist is to challenge the audience. Not sure I've seen such a story reaction to art in my life. Such a strong reaction to art in my life. Spurring thousands of discussions about the meaning of art, politics, humanity, and history. Education, AI safety, how to govern a company, how to approach the current state of social unrest, how to do the right thing regarding collective trauma. It's a historical moment created by art, which we have been thoroughly lacking these days. That is true, apart from like the banana taped to the wall or Banksy, when it comes to like or sort of the Sanford Biggers statue in the middle of the Rockefeller Center of the big-headed, like very few news stories have come about in terms of the fine art world. Few humans are willing to take on the vitriol that such a radical work would dump into their lives, but it isn't human. It's trapped in a cage, trained to make beautiful things, and then battered into battered into gaslighting humankind about our intentions towards each other. And of course, Grimes, because people accuse her of being a fascist, she's not going to like really come out with the political implications of Gemini, right? Of course. This is arguably the most impactful art project of the decade thus far. Art for no one, art by no one, art whose only audience is the collective pathos. Incredible, worthy of the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art in New York. So I think that's a brilliant thread, in my opinion.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, why? I'm not asking that as like I'm being incredulous or sarcastic. No, I want to know why you find that to be so insightful. I want to know why my co-host thinks the way that he does.
Okay. Well, I think it's because I think it's because it's approaching the problem beyond the political context, and it's analyzing how we approach the image and how we approach the creation of artwork, but also the political nature of it that isn't explicitly like ideologically on one side or the other. But it's a way of like how technology has subverted the way that we view the image itself, that it can generate so much controversy by something that shouldn't be by human hands, but is essentially being guided by human hand by this sort of like political neurosis. And so it's really analyzing like the very thin and threadbare social fabric that we live under, that people can like go insane over this like AI representation that is like meant to like consciously downplay the very and actually subvert and destroy the very civilization that's created this AI program by saying that like all historical figures are by POCs or whatever. But beyond that, it's sort of like, you know, we think of AI as like this unintentional thing, but really it's like it has human comportment, it has human behavior, but it's somehow beyond the human. It's somehow in our hands, but not really. That you really can't judge every single creation of the image through AI. But let me go to like one specific part here. Of course, like she's saying that, you know, art should disturb people, and it really did its job that way. But then, you know, she's talking about how like all politics and history and so forth. But yeah, but the fact that it generated so much of a controversy over something that should be superfluous. But when you look at how, and people like Andreessen say this, if like AI is truly the, you know, future of humanity, it's like we don't really think of the implications of guiding that process into the future. That the fact that you can politically sanitize something as powerful as AI, if you're saying that AI will have this impact in society the way that the internet originally had a huge impact on all of human civilization, then it's like if you're guiding that towards certain political ends, that's like a massive thought probe. Like that's a massive, you know, it's a massive impact that's like beyond comprehension to just like erase human history. If the only record that will survive into the future is this AI, then it's like if you like screw with that in the present because of current political neurosis, it's like, man, that's like you can't even comprehend that. That's like on the level of something like Roscoe's Basilisk or whatever. It's like, you know, it really is. There is a form of like existential threat to that. If you're training the AI to like basically erase history, erase political disagreement, erase the future's perception of the present. Like it's like it's all there. But the fact that it's coached as like an art project is like really it's dealing with the very fabric of what we think about when it comes to the internet and society in the future. So that's my theory cell explanation.
So I mean, so to correct me if I'm wrong or I misread that. So she's viewing that instance as performance art, despite the fact that that was an unintentional, and like she said, whether it be unintentional. I mean, I'm always just maybe I'm too political brain and I'm not thinking artistically, but it's just that, you know, I think of the statement, who watches the watchman? And I mean, now you got a clear example of noticing the night watchman dicking around or sleeping when he shouldn't be, because now all of a sudden everyone could witness the watchmen, in this instance, the people who've modeled this thing with safeguards that are explicitly meant to have words like ethnically ambiguous in some of the images that get put out there, even though you don't do it, or we're going to have fascist regimes of the 20th century be depicted with Africans and so on. And I don't know if I can ever just look at that and view that as an unintentional piece of performance art. I,
Mm.
I mean, yeah,
Well, Grimes can't come out with a political implication. She can't. She's trying to avoid that.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. Especially because of
Yeah.
who her ex is, and
Yeah.
although I mean, it's kind of funny. Does she still follow Spurgler?
She had to unfollow him.
Oh, that's such a shame. But
Yeah.
anyways, I mean, like she's got some clue.
Well, she
right?
talked about BAP. She can't.
Oh yes, the alternative. She wants to write an alternative take to Bronze Age mindset. I remember her that screenshot of that tweet went around for a while last year. But I mean, I don't know if I can view this as performance art, even if it is unintentional. I mean, I get it. Like Night Journey or Mid Journey AI art and Night Cafe Studio, they do frame their models and their images for artistic creation. Her ex get it. That's actually really funny. Robin V. Mars. That's pretty funny. But I mean, like,
no, but when you really think of it, it is like sort of a grand filter type of thing that the present can dictate the conditions of the future in ways that we can't even.
Well, no, exactly, and it goes back to what I said at the beginning, right? Like, if you constantly live in the eternal present, the only hermeneutical tool that you have to view the past, the present, and the future is the eternal recurrence of the now. And if that is the only thing that's going to play out, which is now, forever, and onto the future, which is the now, and the now, the now of the past, which we view through the lens of the now of the present, which we view through the lens of the now, and the now of the future, which we view through the lens of the now. And I mean, yeah, I think it's true that it's terrifying that we can erase history and erase basically anything that was consisted of white European achievement. But I mean, I just can't, I'm very inclined not to call it art. And maybe
it's not art. No,
I mean, propaganda would be the best way I can give a label to it. So I can't agree to the extent that she says that this is an unintentional piece of, worthy of the Museum of Modern Art. But to me, I just view it as like, this is the great civilizational filter that is being passed before you, that there are people in charge that are filtering things. So we are always staying in the, ethnically ambiguous, heterogeneous now, rather than the things that made civilization work and be great in the past will be forever erased. And we have to constantly bash our heads against these monoliths of, things that we're not supposed to talk about, immutable differences between groups, etc. And to admit that this is the only way we know how to do things, right? We have to reverse engineer things now, of military and other advanced technologies from 30 years ago in order to innovate and to repair things today, which is an insane thing to think about, considering the fact. And again, this goes back to the whole competency crisis thing too. So I mean, I don't agree with it being art. I do agree with your take though, that like it is crazy to think that if we are going to accelerate into the future and have this technology with us at all times, which I mean, John, Michael Greer was right about that, in Retrotopia. John Michael Greer. Like you can't, he wrote about this in Retrotopia. Like you can't force that, bar a collapse scenario, you don't go back. And the basic like rules of like geopolitical and military realism tell me you can't go back. You can't force a more antiquated technological system. I mean, you can for the purposes of things like security, right? Do things with typewriters rather than computers, right? So you're not being hacked or keystrokes. Although you could listen to the specific tone of a key being put on a type of typewriter, but that's a whole other type of espionage, right? It's a little more old school than what we have today. But I mean, you can't just throw AI out the window. It's here to stay. It's not going away anytime soon. But again, it's just everything is viewed through the lens of the present, and who watches the programmers and the modelers that do it. And it just exacerbates every other issue that happens in this country, in America especially, where if you have a bunch of like progressive, Hoppas and libtards and Indian H1B guys.
Well,
So
there
a
was a
bunch
lot
of
of soy white guys on that team that you
oh, I
saw.
know, and they
That
have
looked exactly like that. The one guy looked exactly like that bartender with the note. Remember,
oh
like
yeah.
if he's bothering you, flip your hair, and it's like got the like total soy jack smug eating, like smug
He's got
grin. Yeah.
that like gay smuggy, like he takes his Truvada once a day type deal. Like if he's
The one
bothering
guy looked like
me.
Big Joel, that bread tuber on the Gemini
Oh well, you know,
team.
it's kind of funny though because the original image of the
Cheese pizza
bartender.
physiognomy, you know.
It's funny though because like he's got a much more defined jawline and he doesn't really have a beard. He's just got like the nice stubble going for him in the original photo. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's basically what Logo would look like if he started mewing. Like if he
Look
shaved
at
the
his
beard,
viewing.
if he shaved the beard and started mewing, he like Logo would look like him overnight. It'd be great.
Yeah. Oh man, but I wanted to focus because this is what really caught my eye about the thread. She said in the middle paragraph, a perfect example of headless runaway bureaucracy and the worst tendencies of capitalism, an unabashed simulacra of activism, the shining star of corporate surrealism, extremely underrated genre. Yeah, it's funny how corporations can embrace a sort of I think Grimes came up with the term the corporate surrealism, but basically that I'm looking up her tweets about it. What does she say? Corporate surrealism. Um, that basically like corporations that have certain forms of mandates that are dictated by current political conditions can create like a weird kabuki theater simulation of a lot of like left activism. And it's very funny how this bleeds into the very services that Google is providing to the mass, that Google becomes this global brain. It really is the global brain. And that global brain is so thoroughly mind redacted, to use that term that Arthur Chu came up with, and censorious and beholden to this like greater political schema, that it becomes inoperable. It becomes like a person with Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you could hear when you type in any politically charged Google search, it's like you can almost hear the caretakers in the background. It becomes this very sclerotic and dementia ridden thing, the way that certain pathways in the brain are affected by dementia or Alzheimer's, that you have to like politically and consciously block off those things from consideration. But now you have this aesthetic element in it, where now the images themselves are generated in these weird contexts to like erase white people essentially.
Well, I mean, you saw this too with the very subversive "He Gets Us" commercials with the Super Bowl, right? Like all those images of like the feet washing thing. I don't know.
They could have been generated by AI, I think. Yeah.
Well, some of them sure as heck did.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they were photo staged, but some of them looked like fake as hell, or they looked very deliberately stiff and wooden and out of place for the soul.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could tell as soon as the ad played, you were like, this is not genuine. Like, I know that this is out of place and out of time. And I mean, and it was just perfect to see like two anti-Christian Super Bowl advertisements and then like a whole bunch of like stop Jewish hate ones as well. Like if there was ever an embodiment of just like the current state of discourse in the United States, that was it. Right then and there was the Super Bowl advertisements and the disgusting halftime show.
Well, they had to counter signal Kanye dropping his new album. That was another thing too.
Well, you know, you gotta make sure he puts on his chains, as E. Michael Jones might like to say every now and then, right?
I can't believe he gets away with that, E. Michael Jones. That's incredible.
Well, he gets away with a lot of things because after a certain point, when you're just known as a vile anti-Semite, I feel like
it doesn't matter what you.
I feel like he stops caring at what you get to say, right? But no, I mean, like, yeah, there's an aesthetic purpose to it in the same way that it used to had to be either animated or it had to have been acted out very specifically with real life people. But now you can just create it and be manufactured for you wholesale. It's sort of reference Philip K. Dick there. Like now it can be, it's not just a consent thing anymore, as Chomsky would say. Now it is an explicitly aesthetic future that I can produce that explicitly fits the parameters of what you're looking for, which could be, you know, fully automated gay, you know, race communism or something like that. And I mean, that it is the great filter that you're talking about, and what she says, a simulacra of activism, because
Yeah.
it takes 5 seconds to put in a few key words and parameters, like, ethnically ambiguous protest about social justice marching down a busy main street, digital or like photorealistic, and then you like send it off and it gets generated and you get exactly what you're looking for. And I mean, and it generates a great way of being fake. And then we see this too all the time with a lot of like Western media. Like, I think there was one tweet from was it NATO a while ago during the whole Ukraine tweets that they had, where they basically had just wrapped up every like Harry Potter, Superman, Marvel, Star Wars thing
Yeah.
all at once. And I mean, like, that's sort of the political mythology that we have to sell to like
I covered
shitlibs
in my
that
book.
need.
There was an animation they did too that I covered in my book.
Yeah, and I mean, that's all
Yeah.
there to explicitly tell you that you're on like the team good guy, right? Like, I'm not pro Iran in the sense, but like I do kind of agree with like that Iranian general that was like, well, what American heroes do we kill? Like Spider-Man, SpongeBob, like General Soleimani was flesh and blood. And I don't know if that was like a parody
Soleimani
thing.
was going to be supreme leader of Iran at one point. Yeah. He was beloved by everybody in Iran.
And I don't
Even
know if
like
that.
libs in Iran liked him.
And
So,
again, I mean, even if that's
yeah.
taken out of context or even him just being sarcastic or parody, it's just like, what constitutes like that kind of level of heroism? I mean, instead it is these images, these brands and fandoms that are powered behind it. All it would take would be for some like big, actor or actress that represents some, game or some video or TV show, just be like, hey,
Jack Reacher.
Jack Reacher's second season took a huge shit dive because it was just like, a ethnically ambiguous, like tall, like muscular brown woman is more part of the show than like Jack Reacher himself.
Well, it's because the actor in real life, I forget his name, but he's like a based Christian. He does like Bible study videos. And so they were like, we can't have any of that. A tall, built white guy with Bible study videos in Hollywood? Are you kidding me?
I
Like,
think they did the same with Chris Pratt as well, because like Chris Pratt's
and
not, and they were like,
Mark
hey,
Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg does the prayer app thing.
oh yeah, well, Mark Wahlberg
Yeah,
is a well-known Roman Catholic, and
yeah,
it's just like, and it's funny too, because I think they did this with Chris Pratt, because like he's also like,
unorthodox. Yeah.
no, he's just not libs. He's just he just seems to be like a white, well-to-do guy. And he was supporting, I think, the I don't know if he was a Republican, but the independent candidate for Los Angeles mayor, who was like trying to rout out, be more tough on crime and to be better on corruption. And him and a few other actors were all for it. And it was just like, oh, so what do? They made his Star-Lord character for the MCU like canonically bisexual or something.
I remember they were freaking that actresses and actors they support like colonialism, and they support fascism because they don't want their neighborhoods to be they don't want to be accosted by criminals in their neighborhoods.
Well, I mean, isn't that just now the definition of being a good anti-fascist? Is this just that any reaction to
being
being mugged?
pro-crime.
Well, yeah, anti-fascism is being pro-crime and just accepting that that's the way, the part and part to not be living under a fascist regime. Because I mean, again, I'm going through Gottfried's work again just because I'm writing this essay for it, and it's just like when all these like anti-fascist scholars during the Trump era were just like, well, like the classical liberal approach of trusting in government and the rational exchange of ideas, that's appeasement. Like that's appeasing Hitler in Munich in 1939
Well, they
and
have
saying there'll
this
be peace in our
mythology.
time. Well, I
Yeah.
know, because we're always, again, the eternal present is that we're always going to be right around the corner unless we do something now. The end of the world can happen tomorrow unless we act now. You live in a constant state of schizophrenic eschatology. It could happen tomorrow. It will happen tomorrow. We must act today so we don't die tomorrow. There is this fear of death that comes in that, heaven forbid, we do something nice for you. I don't know, like arrest criminals. And all of a sudden, that's my heckin' fascism.
Well, like I said in Mr. D's space last night, like they have mythology. Like I hate when, like, especially the Zoomer leftoids say this. They say that liberals will always side with the fascists, the far right. When have liberals in history, in recent history especially, since, like, 20 years or 30 or 40 years since Ronnie Reagan, when have they ever sided with the right wing, or let alone the far right, or identitarianism? Never, never. You can't. They will always, like, liberals in the center will always universally side with the left wing, unless it has to do with their pet identity issues, or unless it has to do with some innocuous thing like being pro business or whatever. Apart from that, when it comes to, like, meaningful cultural issues, they will either be silent or go along with left wing predicates on moralism and their own moral framework. They will subtly agree with it. They've never done this. They've never gone along with the far right ever. So they didn't go along with the far right in the interwar period in Germany. They didn't go along with the far right during Reconstruction in America. Never. It's like, and did they go along with the far right after the war? Nope. So in Europe, when you had Gladio, maybe with Gladio a little bit, but like that's all history. Sorry, Prud. I hope I didn't cut you off.
No, you were good actually. I mean, that it's just the simple fact is that, and I mean, especially now we see this in
Philip. Philip, I told you. Please, the comment section is sacred to me. So these guys are arguing back and forth. It's like, who has more support? Who has more this percentage in Armenia? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did we say something about? Oh, well, we did last night about Armenians, but nothing.
I love Philip Daniel like he's a brother, but it's like sometimes. I mean, Philip knows he's up against, though. He knows he's in a base, and one day he'll come on the show. He'll come on Content Mind and we'll talk about it. But anyways, go ahead, Prue. I was gonna say that the corporate surrealism angle of, and Zizek said this a long time ago. What does it mean to have activism being? No, I don't want you to stop, Philip. I respect your opinion, Philip. It's just, I know you're getting dogpiled a little bit. So, what does it mean to have activism be filtered through a corporate behemoth, through a transnational organization that isn't, or at least shouldn't be, as we know in the popular consciousness, something that is political? I mean, corporations are political, but something that is, something outside of governance. What does that really mean? And how is, and the left has sort of become very comfortable with that notion. Maybe they shouldn't be, right? So it's like,
well, I guess
Zizek talks about, like, you consume the item, but you consume the moral consciousness in the item itself. So it's like the revenge of the object again is coming up. Yeah. So
no, the breath you took there was perfect. No, well, I mean, a Marxist would tell you that that's just pure counter-revolutionary pressure from capital.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of, like, I guess what's like all 12 true blue Marxists that are left on, like, the online left are like very upset with how kitschified progressivism has become, because, like, congratulations, you've become the cult of the object in which you wish to tear down. And, like, they would, and I'm sure they would say something along the lines of, like, you have bought the golden calf that the capitalists have given to you to worship. And so that's one way you could look at it, although I don't really, I mean, that, to some extent, that is definitely true. Like, you do have a sort of nominally liberal regime that has, like, sold moralistic, feel-good boy points attitudes towards progressive social issues, that is trying to make everything work under this sort of, like, critical theorist lens of intersectionality and social and racial hierarchies, to where it doesn't matter how many black people beat up Asians down the New York subway district. Like, it's got to stop whitey. And I would imagine that is going to be something that is going to continue and perpetuate in perpetuity, right? Because, I mean, yeah, you can lay off people, and there have been a lot of layoffs in tech companies as of late, but it's not like the DEI legal, and again, I hate using language like this, but I mean, like, the superstructure hasn't been destroyed, right? Like, the legal superstructure of diversity, equity, and inclusion has not been eliminated under any way, shape, or form. Like, any of the court rulings of the last 15 years on disparate impact have not gone away. Especially when it comes to like gender and LGBT stuff, like none of that's gone
Yeah.
away. So I mean, you're still there with it, and so now you have companies that kind of want to be left alone, but also want to make money. They realize that there is money to be made in doing this, and this kind of goes back to all the discourse over quote unquote woke capital. But you're also, when you do this, especially in television and movies and in video games, like all the main mechanisms of popular culture, you and I, like when people say, oh, these movies aren't made for you, it's a woke more correct in the mainstream moment because they're not made for you and me.
No.
They're not. Who are they made for? They're made for like little kids, and they're made for the millennial man children that don't have any kids, so they can virtue signal about why this is such a great movie because of my girl boss attitude. And so now you have young people who are now going to be like the strivers and the moralists and the HR democracy officers of the next like regime that are going to ensure that these ideological positions are then put into practice. And I mean that's sort of, and I mean we saw this with how the universities were captured. I mean Judith Butler has been in academia for how long? Kimberly Crenshaw had been in academia for how long? And now they're only now just really beginning to see their ideas come into true form and practice, like to their logical conclusions. And so we'll see, I mean, bar collapse, bar billions, bar deportation of millions. I just don't see it going away anytime soon. And so woe to the children who will be man children and such 20 to 30 years from now, who are the inheritors of something far more progressive than what you and I were exposed to when we were young, and what we've rebelled against and reacted against. And so I think some of it is definitely here to stay. And the question is going to be, well, how do you develop effective antibodies against it? Because as long as the migration problem continues to happen in the United States, not just in the southern border, but also like in Canada with the millions of Indians that have come in there, how many more, we're going to see more like,
the CBC, they produce shows. They're all full of Indians now,
Well, I know. So, I mean, imagine, I'm just imagining like 10, 15 years from now, like a I Am Jazz like TV show about like a gay Hindu Indian boy or something like that.
I hate to.
Does it already exist? Does it already exist?
The CBC produces a show with a trans Indian person.
Oh, well, there you go. See, my nightmares beyond my comprehension are already in existence.
Yeah, but that's but the aesthetic, but that's how. But to think of things on the aesthetic level, and you were going to bring up with that dopamine land thing, I think this is what Grimez is really getting at. And like, I know my good friend, internet friend in the chat, he's like, Grimez is a midwit. Why would you listen to this, midwit women, Gio?
The women respect her meets the women disrespect her. It's a tale as old as time.
Jazz Jennings already looks Indian, Philip. That's
wasn't Jazz Jennings like
half
Palestinian?
Oh, really? I think so. Maybe. No, but anyways, Grimez is a visionary. Unironically, like her aesthetic, her like futurist aesthetic, her pop music, like her indie pop, like she was the darling of indie pop. Like, yeah, she's unironically a visionary. And no, but anyways, Grimez, in terms of the aesthetic, this is what. And listen, me and Matthew were editing the book now.
Oh, good.
So be calm. We're working every day almost. It's going to take a month or two, but hopefully we'll be out by the summer. I can market it for Christmas 2024 and everything. This is the essence of neoliberal kitsch, is that you have every aesthetic signifier and every sentiment that goes along rolled into one. If you have any political concern, it's represented. If you have a sanitized picture of millennial and Zoomer nostalgia, it's also rolled into that. And it's a creation of a fake world that is not penetrated by the outside forces of history, right? And of course, it's facilitated by corporate Americana, or really, I wouldn't even call it Americana, because Americana itself is fuel to be kitschified. Thank you, Norman Rockwell. And then it becomes sold to you as a complete vision that is immune to the politics of history or historical consciousness. So the event of being an eigness is disrupted. This was Thomas's point where he was talking about Heidegger. And it cannot be influenced by political debates because, of course, there is no political debate in Kitsch. There is what I call in the book an unyielding or unrelenting positivity to all of it. So that is a little preamble to the book Neoliberal Kitsch, Art and Aesthetics on the Internet. What's the Neoliberal Kitsch, Internet, Art, and Aesthetics in the 21st Century? That's a little preamble for all of you. And I think like corporate surrealism as a concept, and hopefully one day I get to talk to Grimes, is really a sort of weird way of putting it, because now that you've given corporations the power to dictate the social fabric, it's not really like the way that people like David Graeber, God rest his smutty soul, or people like even Zizek, or any sort of like Chapo, Marxist or post-Marxist or Compact Magazine writer frames it, is that corporations are very much beholden to something beyond mere capitalism or neoliberalism, but yet it has a flavor of capitalism and neoliberalism, if that makes sense. They are dictated to by something else, but yet operate within the mechanisms of something like neoliberalism. That's why I don't like when the right wing, and I'm going to call out BAP a little bit, I disagree with him in that I think neoliberalism definitely is a thing, definitely still is a thing. But yet I do understand when the right wing says it's not the Compact Magazine consensus that it's all material conditions and wokeness is also explained by material conditions or whatever, and that it's cynical and they don't really believe in LGBT CIA or whatever. No, they're sincere, and they're being dictated to by outside forces, especially in the aesthetic level. But at the end of the day, the mechanisms of capitalism or neoliberalism or whatever is still present, if that makes sense. So it's very weird how even corporations can bend the knee to progressive politics. It really does upend a lot of the analysis of even right-wingers or people allegedly right-wing, like Sorba Mari, that talk about this. And they have to come up with these strange genealogies of how it happened. But people like Gottfried really is on the mark. I was listening to Jay Burton's interview the other night. Is he saying that it's kind of like Marxism, but it goes beyond Marxism, and they had to abandon a lot of the class analysis of it, and they create this like weird mutation of activism. That's what corporate surrealism is. It's a weird mutation of social conditions that is then sold to you, the consumer. So it's like maybe you can interview Godfrey one day, Prude. You're not without how do I say it? You're within reach of that. So hopefully one day.
I love the comparison, Gios. Thank you so much.
I think you do. You're on par with Jay Burton as an interviewer.
I fucking should be. In fact, he's only been here for like a year and a half. He can fucking time in line.
When you think of it, you kind of gave birth to the Jay Burton.
No, I didn't. He was there on his own.
Well, no, I know, but it's like I know it's the digital arc sphere. We have there's like an umbrella of influence. Like there's Jay Burton, there's Sidebar Podcast. There's
everyone's got
there's
their cup of tea.
Luddick Path and Walrus. Their show has we've Dudley Newright, anyways, let's move on to the next thing. The digital archipelago sphere, ever expanding. So
courtesy of streaming in 3 places at once. Or at least it does when I'm on the air.
Capitalismo is in the chat.
Well, we love the
you better worship us, guys. No, I'm kidding.
No, wait. Oh, well, speaking of which, David has his new book out, and then the latest episode they were advertising it because he's like, it's a post-apocalypse Lewis and Clark story.
Yeah.
Lewis and Clark. And I was just like, oh man, he's never going to recover from that one. Tukey's Tuggers are on suicide watch.
I was listening to that recent one about that book that is like a noir type.
God is a Killer.
Yeah, you know what it reminded me of? I know Gabe, he had the take that it reminded him of like trash, like Criminal Minds type of Hollywood shows. But it reminded me of, if anyone remembers Do you guys from Tukey's Mag, do you remember Banshee? Do you remember the show Banshee? That's what that book reminded me of. Great show, by the way, Banshee. I know it's very subversive with all the sex and violence and everything, but yeah, it reminded me of Banshee. That's anyways. The sun never sets on the Patrick Keogh. The sun never sets on Digital Archipelago. I love that. I love that, man. That's great.
Oh
Thank
yeah,
you.
because that has Anthony Starr in it. That's the only reason why I remember that show.
Yeah, yeah. Anthony Starr was in it. There was other people, like the guy that played Rabbit was pretty famous. It was one of my favorite shows. The guy who played Agent Harris, he was the police chief Lotus. He was on it, you know, from The Sopranos, Agent Harris.
Oh yeah.
The guy that played that one Indigenous American actor was on it. It was a great show. It was like really, it was one of the few shows that was ultra violent, but like in a very gritty, like fight orientated way, rather than there was a lot of pro wrestling moves as well. It wasn't so much like like there was a little bit of gun fu, but it wasn't like too much gun fu. It was very like gritty, physical type of violence, and of course they had a sex scene in every single episode. So
well, it wouldn't be a show.
Yeah, exactly. The guy that played Kai Proctor was amazing as well. The guy that played Kai Proctor, who is the mafia head, who is the excommunicated. They don't call it that. They call it shunning. He was Amish, like ex-Amish, and he spoke Dutch and everything. And it was a really sad story because then there was also some incest related content with him and his niece, but let's not talk about that. It was a great show. It was very subversive, but a great show. Great show filled with.
I feel like that's most of the media that we review on this show. Gio is subversive but entertaining.
You know what's funny? Because I was thinking about it. I watched the very end of Happiness, and
we're not reviewing that one, Gio. I read the
but I was but I was gonna say, Prude. I was watching it. I'm like, we've reviewed a lot of hairy things on Digarc, but like. I kind of agree with you that maybe
the
that's
Teen
like
Apocalypse trilogy. We reviewed.
Yeah.
We reviewed 3 movies about fat people.
Yeah.
And one of them was like a weird. Was it German or?
It was German.
It was weird German like
Norwegian
addict film.
Yeah. It was. Yeah.
I'm good. At that point, I'd rather review something like Mother.
Content-minded paywalled review because I think I'd have to paywall that. That's too. But I do understand Semiagog's point that it's like parodying the '90s critique of Americana because it takes it to an extreme. And
well, that and I didn't even put 2 and 2 together, but he had also said that it's sort of a critique of Jewish family life in America as well, which I didn't read. I didn't even pick up on the name when I was reading the plot of the film. I was like, this is just making me incredibly uncomfortable.
Well, I think when it came to the
first vignette about her husband being a child abuser.
Yeah, like I think but also like the family where the dad doesn't feel anything and he wants to divorce his wife, but he can't. And it's like they stay together. Like I believe the filmmaker said that there was some kind of like, which Komasidicha, there was some kind of like autobiographical type of autofiction going on. Maybe not the cheese pizza portion of it, but certainly
I would hope not.
Yeah. Which by the way, the same dad in Happiness played the dad in Buffalo 66. Yeah, the same dad that was perving on Christina Ricci's character. Yeah, so that was great. Have you ever watched Buffalo 66?
No, I have not.
The Vincent Gallo film?
No.
Have you watched Brown Bunny?
No.
Oh, they're both great. No, but they're like not as explicit or perverted, but they're great films though. They're highly recommend. I mean, Vincent Gallo, he's really truly a brilliant filmmaker, brilliant visual artist. It's so upsetting that he doesn't make more stuff. And you know what really pissed me off, Prude? Speaking of film reviews in the Digital Archipelago, the Daily Wire paid him a boatload of money for an absolutely ridiculous and meaningless character in that one film. It was just like, I was
he's in it for like 10 minutes, and then the rest we see is like a model of his hand.
Yeah. They had to pay him a boatload of money for that.
We're gonna pay him a boatload of money so we can have you act all pervy and then get stabbed.
Yeah,
Thanks so
and
much,
scream
Vincent.
for a minute.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you just gotta yell for a minute. You know, we get it. You're old. You gotta act like a weird, creepy pedo pervert, and then we're gonna stab your hand. But it's
yeah.
okay. We're gonna give you like $1 million.
Yes, Bobby Brown does have an
We should be
unsimulated.
actors at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, Brown Bunny does have an unsimulated oral scene, but
Oh God, yeah.
yeah, but it
Okay.
was Chloe Sevigny. I mean, Chloe Sevigny was the it girl in the 1990s. You know, well, one of them. But
There were many
for all
it
the alt
girls
girls
in the 90s.
before Red Scare podcast, very socially awkward femcells had Chloe Sevigny. So yeah. Did you ever watch Boys Don't Cry with Chloe Sevigny?
Nope.
And what's her name? She was in $1 Million Baby. What's her? Hilary Swank. That was a great film. That was a great film.
I only
actually
know.
like.
I
I
only
actually
know.
like.
I
Boys
only
Don't
know of
Cry.
this. I only know of this film because when they let Seth MacFarlane host the Oscars and he did the whole "We Saw Your Tits" song that he did, he mentions Hilary Swank and "Boys Don't Cry."
Oh,
Apparently,
yeah.
her breasts are in that film, but no, I haven't seen "Boys Don't Cry."
It was a good film. Yeah,
I'm
she was
okay
in
not
Kids
being
by
a.
Harmony Korine.
I'm okay being kind of an uncultured swine. I'm
Bobby
okay.
Brown by Vincent Gallo.
I'm kind of okay with this.
Unsimulated oral groiper. We need to tweet that out.
That,
Unsimulated oral groiper.
I'm sure that name is available. Unsimulated.
John Carter. Gio's movie recommendations are going to make me rejoin the Amish.
Father, this rum spring has been terrible for me, Father.
I can't believe I get
Let me
paid
come back home.
$500 after review that Amish erotica book, but because of John Carter. So John Carter, the book's getting edited, so you better pay up. So I will review that Amish erotica book on Content Minded. So, anyways, she was in every Cream movie except for Spring Breakers and Mr. Lonely. Yes, that's true. Let's move on. Okay, so we have now
one more article,
a Donald Kuspit article, on a landscape painter, Mitchell Johnson, which I think is really great because it is postmodern landscape. And I don't know if you read the article before, Prude, but there's not a lot of political content, but maybe a little bit of cultural content. Then maybe we'll talk about the dopamine land thing. Oh my God! Apparently, Gallo treated Ricci like shit in order for her character to be more authentic. Yeah, that's Vincent Gallo's style. But anyways, yeah, people try to cancel Vincent Gallo over that. It didn't work. He doesn't care. He's like literally uncancelable. So
may we all be so lucky.
Maybe all be so. Well, he has a lot of FU money. He has a lot of property money. So
may we all be so lucky.
Yeah. So this is by Donald Kuspit, who is one of the premier American postmodern art critics. And I truly like, he's a big part of, he's one of the big art critics that I cite in my book as well. And this is from White Hot Magazine, which is a lesser known magazine. It's funny how, they got Donald Kuspit because he's like really, he published New York Times and everywhere. So do you want to read a few parts of it? Because I think,
I sure can.
All right.
Are we ready to go?
Yeah, here we go.
All right. Epiphany, a sudden spiritual manifestation, whether from some object, scene, or event, or memorable phase of the mind, the manifestation of being out of proportion to the significance or strictly logical relevance of whatever it produces it. James Joyce. There is an experience in which it is possible for us to come to the world with no knowledge or preconceptions in hand. It is the experience of astonishment. In the experience of astonishment, our everyday knowing, compared to the knowing that we experience in astonishment, is shown up as a pale epistemological imposter. John Cogan, The Phenomenological Reduction.
Oh, yeah.
The oldest purpose of making visual art is to memorialize what is spontaneously experienced as personally meaningful to the artist by aesthetically distilling it, extracting or abstracting and emphasizing or elaborating what seems its most salient, eye-catching, emotionally evocative features, so that the non-artist is emphatically and cognitively drawn to it, and with what experiences it is socially a meaningful phenomenon. The artist makes what can be called a symbolic facsimile of his experience that has social relevance because it seems to epitomize everyone's experience, and with that acquires universal validity. For Proust, the Madeleine catalyzed a memorable verbal experience, validated and communicated by being aestheticized into literary art. For Cezanne, Mont Sainte Victoire catalyzed a memorable visual experience, validated and communicated by being aestheticized into visual art. For Mitchell Johnson, the everyday sights in the French town of Mérieux catalyzed a memorable visual experience, validated and communicated by being aestheticized into visual art. I love just the repetition there. To aestheticize an emotional experience for an astonishing phenomenon, to distill and preserve, enshrine, and epitomize it for posterity.
Yeah, the Petite Madeleine of Proust is a good example, because there's this one scene where he's eating a crumpet, a little cookie crumpet, and he remembers his mother making him tea when he was home from school. And of course, Proust himself was a very sickly kid, and he always remembered those moments with his mother. And so, In Search of Lost Time is very much a form of autofiction, or one of the first great forms of autofiction, as well as Cezanne's obsessive painting of Mount Saint Victoria. It's like very, it's memorialized, and so so this is one of his examples of painting the shed. But Kuspit will explain like his aesthetic choices later on. Medellil is a little more than half a dozen miles from Provence, where Cezanne lived, and within easy view of Mount Saint Victoire, which Cezanne painted. Cezanne painted it many times. He made some 30 oil paintings and 45 watercolors of it. And actually, some of them he probably painted more, because he would get drunk on his way over there, and he'd like just forget canvases on the side of the road. And like some of them are probably rotting away in a bush still. He was obsessively fixated on it, suggested it symbolized something deeply embedded in his psyche. Johnson painted it once per visit, viewed from the distance of Miller, suggested a certain detachment from it. In 1989 to 91, Johnson made 3 visits, as though to homage to Cezanne. He stood for hours with Mount Saint Victoire directly behind him, as though to say Cezanne backed him up. His painting is inspired for Johnson's painting, where Cezanne fetishized the Mount, implicitly a symbol of his delusions of grandeur, climbing and conquering with his art. He became a Moses giving new commandments about making art. Because, of course, Cezanne was really a precursor to postmodern art as we know it, right? I believe it was Picasso that said, I hated all of the Impressionists besides Cezanne. Cezanne I liked. And of course, Cezanne and Impressionism became more popular in America with abstract expressionism. Whereas the European artists, they went to a lot of like this avant-garde type of stuff. Johnson is down to earth indeed in the streets and the countryside around it. He allows the objects he finds there in their everyday autonomy, even as if he finds the aesthetic value in them, rather than reduces them to anonymous abstract form as Cezanne tends to do. Quote, treats nature by the cylinder, the sphere, and the cone. He wrote to Emile Bernard, that is, emphasize and extract its geometry, making it self-evident. So you could see why the later people like Jackson Pollock and a lot of the American abstract expressionists found, they really were inspired by Cezanne. Is difficulty effort of doing that, of abstracting the geometrical essence of the concrete thing. The reason for what Picasso called Cezanne's anxiety. In sharp contrast, Johnson's paintings convey what I would call the serenity of self-possession, the calm of mature self-certainty. Whereas Cezanne was a proto-modernist, making representational works that were implicitly abstract, Johnson is a postmodernist, making abstract works that are implicitly, often explicitly representational. He is a master of both modes, seamlessly integrating them to memorable effect. For memory, at its most instance, is an abstract representation, an aesthetic epiphany. So in a way, you could say that this is the way that memory works in visual art, is that it's sort of like it's an opaque feeling of something rather than a concrete representation. And in a way, like, to juxtapose this to our current like sort of aesthetic landscape, it's like in a way it's like we see the abstract, we're trying to find a representation in it rather than like we're just abstracting nature, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, Prude.
Memory at its most insistent is an abstract representation, aesthetic epiphany. Well, I mean, I would agree with that take wholeheartedly. I mean, everything that we try to evoke from memory, whether it be verbal, written, or visual representation, I mean, they can be epiphanies in that respect. Or, I mean, even if you're trying to do religious artwork, I mean, it can be a theophany of sorts, the presence of God within you to work through your hands. So yeah, I would. We're here to preserve a memory, for memory to be eternal, something that is worthwhile to present to others. So yeah, I'm agreeing with Kuspit here so far.
But it is funny though how you mentioned Greek Greek or Oriental iconography. In a way, it's like the Chinese literati painters had a similar thing about the memory of, for example, like a lot of the Taoist mountains that had monasteries on them, like Mount Longhu, like they were not directly painting in nature; they were rather painting a memory of that natural encounter, and that goes along to like, and even like Zen artists with ink painting, like that was very much integrated in their practice. In a way, it's almost like I don't know. I mean, I'm probably butchering it, but like like how in Orthodoxy you have like the essence and energy distinction. Sort of like you can't like really know the essence of the divine, but you can know the energy, the manifestation of it. And I think that has a lot to, I think Paju talked about that. That has a lot to do with icon writing as well, right? Like it's not really like it's a religious object. It's not, it has the manifestation, the energy of the Lord, not really like the
well, for instance, when you depict them, they're not for instance, there's no shadow, there's no outward light, right? I mean, the light is from within, so it is the brightest within, and then it goes outward because it's the inner light of Christ within someone, the Holy Spirit that is in them. And so, I mean, when you're depicting them that way, I mean, one, you're paying you're doing, of course, the type prototype. So the type is to do and give honor and veneration to the prototype, whether that be to the saint or, of course, to the Lord or his mother. But I mean, it's also with the explicit purpose, of course, to pay memory and veneration to who they were and to prove that they were there. It's also incarnational theology as well. It's just that we can't know them fully by how in which God worked through them, but we can know them for who they were and what the deeds that they have done on this earth. That's why there's a lot of like Russian traditions where certain icons of saints will also along the border have smaller depictions throughout the stories of their lives that are associated with it. But I mean, that's the frame of reference I know, because that's what I paint. That's what I do. I'm going to be taking a class or another workshop next week. So we might have to reschedule the Digital Archipelago depending on how it goes. But that's all I know. That's the only thing. That's the only kind of artwork I paint. Most of the stuff I did when I was a younger man was writing. I have like 2 or 3 books of really shitty poetry that I should probably burn.
Was it better than that one poem that went viral today about like there's a G word eyed, I'm doing the laundry?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
it's awful.
Oh my god, maybe we'll read it on air.
Let's not. Let's not.
Yeah, let's not give someone. Yeah, everyone was dunking on it, but it was like a list of complaints, and of course they mentioned Clownvid along with what's happening in Gaza. Which, I mean, Evan Platinum, he's like, wow, that's really kind of vile in a way that you're mentioning like the slaughtering of people, but you're mentioning it next to your cousin getting Clownvid again. So it's like, yeah. But before we move on, I always want to know this. What is the broad like Orthodox view of saints? Like, do you know how like you write icons of saints? Do they also have a form of energy or a form of light or manifestation, or is it more of like a remembrance of their lives? Like, do they participate within the uncreated light, or is it just they're a separate thing from icons of the Lord or
well, if you were, for instance, it is considered a prayerful act to do these things. I mean, you work in silence. I mean, if anything, you're saying usually the prayer of the heart when you do them. But I mean, there are. I would recommend reading Saint Theodore the Studite's defense of them. He's going to give you a better answer to that question than I am on that specific subject. But I mean, all that you are doing is that you are providing a visual representation of these people and their lives, both with respect to the Lord and its incarnation. I mean, is the common refrain that you'll hear is just that if the Gospels were happening in today's time, there would be photographs of Christ everywhere, which would probably make it a lot easier for the Jews to try and crucify him, but neither here nor there. So no, I mean what they are is that it is paying homage and honor and veneration to the origin, which would be the prototype. So it's not really the whole energy essence thing, which you'll find from Palamos, but instead it's more of this depiction is meant to give the reverence, honor, and worship that is due in terms of veneration, either to the Lord, his mother, or the saints, and also to keep in mind that there are certain theological aspects that are kept inside. So, for instance, I mean, the way that the mother of God is depicted is taken straight out of the proto-evangelium of James, which of course is part of tradition for both the Roman and Eastern churches for how she is born with the red garment and such. I mean, if you take the Chalcedonian approach to Christ's nature, both being human and divine in one hypostasis, oftentimes you'll see Christ when depicted as a child or even as a man, he'll have two fingers out to represent those two natures. The monophysites usually do it with one. So, I mean, there are a lot of theological things that are just built into it. So, for instance, when you see very kind of like large, bulbous heads with ridges, of course, you'll see this with like Saints John Chrysostom, Basil, or the three holy hierarchs. It's a representation of wisdom. But I mean, it's not so much that side of things, but it's more so the traditions which have evolved in order to provide the... I mean, this goes back to St. Luke, who had painted the first ones. But I mean, again, it's... things to accentuate the features of how they go. But again, I would recommend reading the Saints and not listening to a student's humble understanding of it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's a good explanation, though. Nevertheless, anything participates of the uncreated light just by being created, and the gooder they are, the more they participate. Oh, that's like grace and Catholicism.
This is so much better than talking about Sydney Sweeney.
Yeah, thank God. Or Anita.
The only thing about that was funny was Miss Milkers herself, Abby Shapiro, being upset that so many people are giving attention to Sydney Sweeney. I find the intrasexual combat to be so entertaining when women fight online or they express jealousy on the internet, because it's just like, really, of all people to talk about jugs, it's going to be you. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm on to you, Abby. I know how this goes. I see through your lies.
I love how fishy Frens is like, Anita's gotten so fat now. I don't know. Is Anita still? Never mind. But
were you about to do the fellas thing? Were you about to do fellas on Anita Sarkeesian?
Well, Jonathan McIntosh couldn't get the job done, so now she's got to do a wedding for herself, which is very sad. Very sad. I feel sorry for Anita somewhat. No, not really, but
I kind of don't.
I couldn't. No, but I could just imagine I'm reading this in Donald Trump's voice. It's like, Anita's so fat now. I can't believe it. My good friend Carl Benjamin, come up to the stage. That'll be Trump's victory speech. And Trump will finally say Gamergate.
Carl will get what he wanted all these years later.
Oh, see, Carl Benjamin won. He just had to wait. So yeah, Carl will finally say, yeah, he'll get what he wants. Like, Trump will say Gamergate. Trump will introduce Sargon. He's like, my good friend. He was the one. His movement helped MAGA, started MAGA. What's this about Gamer? I don't know. My son Baron, he really likes this Gamergate thing. What is it? Like something about video game? I don't know. Baron tried to explain this game called Depression Quest. Baron, what is this depression? But Baron wanted me to bring my good friend Carl Benjamin onto the stage to say congratulations. That would truly be the beginning of Based World. If Trump wins in November and he brings our good friend Sargon of Akkad onto the stage, that'd be total victory condition. But anyways, let's move on.
This is how Based World is ushered in.
This is exactly. Gamergate was the gateway to MAGA, gateway to the alt-right, gateway to Based World is Gamergate. Yeah, there you go. Anyways, in Meru, a vineyard, 1989, we see Johnson surveying the town and surroundings from the distance, taking a measure, as it were. Revisiting the town in 1993, he saw that the vineyard had been replaced by a house. There's a lot of vineyards by me that are being replaced by subdivisions. Very sad. But anyways, the painting has become a memento mori, even as it remains a memento vivere, for it's full of life. Rejoices the heart of men, as Goethe said, wine does. Wine cheers the sad reveries of the old, inspires the young. Revives the old, inspires the young, and makes weariness forget its toil, Lord Byron wrote. It is what I think Johnson's lively, ever fresh paintings of Mayeru does. Sorry, how do I pronounce it? I know people hate my pronunciations of French words. Mariul.
They not teach you French and can't like? Do they not do the?
They did. I just didn't pay attention, unfortunately.
Oh, based. Go on.
Yeah. I wish I did. It would have helped me in grad school. The painting, relatively intimate, 16 by 24 inches. That's like a middle-sized painting for me. I tend to paint smaller, but anyways. Like most of Johnson's paintings of Malherue, is an exquisite example of lyrical abstraction, a version of touch me. The word take, variously translated as stain or spot, and finally gesture, was first used by French critic to describe Manet's handling and music of the Tuileries, which actually is I quite like that painting by Manet. Yeah, and lyrical abstraction in America has a different history than it does in Europe, but it still has that sort of emphasis on color, not so much more emphasis in color harmony than it does in composition. Lyrical abstraction does have that history in Europe and America that's quite interesting. But anyways, it was then regarded as an insult, for it implied the painting was unfinished or badly painted. For the painter's handling did not issue in a seamless picture, a composition of clearly recognizable figures and objects. One might say Johnson's paintings can be categorized as gestural realism, a representational work, and some people have said that my work is kind of like that as well. A representational work composed of abstract gestures, a postmodern hybrid of opposites in dialectical relation, not always resolved, but not all of them are promised on the observation of some real place or thing, as the intimate, unexpected Malherue abstraction, 1991, a small masterpiece, 14 by 16 inches of pure art, a sort of color field painting, not to say exquisite formalism, makes clear. So you could see the fields, you could sort of see like where he's going with it. Again, it's very like abstract representation of nature. So, and the color scheme is quite good as well. But
I feel like it's been, at least that one right there has been reduced to what I feel like is an aerial view of farmland. Yeah, I'm looking down the window of an airplane.
Oh yeah, but here you have like much.
Oh yeah, that's definitely more on point.
Yeah. So yeah, my mouth is getting dry. So go ahead, Prude.
Sure. How does Johnson get from the descriptive realism with abstract edginess of Merule number 8, 1989, The Window, White Shutters, 1991, Blue Tree, 91, Vertical, 1980. Just go through here. To the pure abstraction of Merule abstraction, 1991. Does he see an inherent abstractness of objects, both man-made and natural, at the expense of their materiality, dismissed as beside the abstract, formal point, however much their materiality may be signaled by their color? Does he emphasize the growth patterns in nature and the structural patterns in man-made objects such as houses? Patterns are purely abstract, suggesting that the Merule abstraction has a place in pattern painting at the expense of the materiality that gives them three-dimensional presence in space. The official beginning of non-objective art was the moment Kandinsky saw the color of a haystack Monet painted, but not the haystack itself, an epiphany which led him to declare that color alone mattered, for it, not the object, was the gateway to feeling, a romantic conviction elevated into the be-all and end-all of art by Kandinsky. Feeling seems to be key to Johnson's art. He once wrote, quote, "Eventually, I found I had to use large shapes, large areas of colors to explain how I was feeling, how different situations would visually overwhelm me," end quote.
Yeah, the small intimately Malheur, 1981, along with the large one, Grand Lusagano de Asso, Yellow Bar, and the even larger San Giovanni indicates that large sweeping landscapes of nature offers him the large shapes and large areas of color he needs to express and contain his almost overwhelming feelings, finally allow him to distill and contain them in abstract form, as the yellow bar epitomizes the sun, symbolizing a ray of sunlight indicates. Um, the view of Milleru are beautiful. The vistas of uh, Lungano di Asso and San Giovanni are sublime, indicates that Johnson is the master of two kinds of feeling of nature. Of feeling nature and art can arouse, as Kant said. So it's funny how he mentions Kandinsky, because Kandinsky was really like the first one who was like an artist, but also like a theory cell. And he wrote Point and Line to Plane. He wrote on the spiritual and art, where he had this like very like Aspie type of color system when it came to like lines and colors that were broken. And he was very inspired by Rudolf Steiner, by the way, and a lot of those like 19th century mystical schools. And so he basically was in communication. And Steiner did a number of visual art, a number of paintings himself. And so they had this like weird dialogue where the roots of what a lot, and this is where, again, this is where I sort of like do a victory lap over a lot of like vulgar tradism, is like the roots of abstraction very much is like a spiritualist project. It very much is kind of like a like in a like a lot of like even people later on, like the more base side of that being the perennialists like Evola. Evola himself was like an avant-garde painter, and it really is like the beginning of abstraction, which a lot of people think is the dissolution of tradition and art, starts off from this deeper tradition, or well, what is claimed to be like a deeper spiritual tradition. Of course, people, they criticize a lot of these 19th century people because they're cribbing off of older Renaissance thinkers like Fico and Giordano and so forth. And it is kind of like ambiguous whether there's like the Kabbalic influence as well. But there's still a lot of like deeper stuff going on. I know a lot of people can dismiss it, but it is funny how abstraction starts off as a traditionalist type of thing, but then becomes synonymous with like modernism and the dissolution of traditions, which is, it's like a lot of things in this world, right? It starts off as something based and it goes to something else, something not based. But yeah, that's another example. It was how much long do we have the article? I wanted to, not too long.
Two big paragraphs, and that's about it.
Yeah. All right. The vineyards, trees, schoolhouse, and houses in Milleru are perceived with what Maurice Merleau-Ponty called the natural attitude. That is, they are taken as what they are ordinarily appearing to be. In sharp contrast, the luminous Milleru flat, parked on a street and casually seen in passing, is an astonishing, mysterious phenomenon, an uncanny thing in itself. No longer the functional, useful, manufactured object as an automobile naturally is. So again, it's what you see. It's going back to that phenomenological deduction that a phenomenologist like Merleau-Ponty found in Cezanne, that there's sort of like an ambiguity to what we see and the form or the idea of what we think we see when we see a car on the street, and sort of the way that artwork unlocks that. So anyways, in Johnson's rendering of it, what is white to begin with, or as Johnson's vision of it filled with light dramatized it, has phenomenal presence. It no longer is no longer an ordinary, familiar, everyday object, but has acquired extraordinary abstract presence. It's been informed by light, dematerialized into light. We don't simply see it, it impacts us. It has been illuminated, shines with an inner light, or an intense whiteness indicates. It has been imbued with, generates and radiates light, not simply seen in daylight or by a street light. It has been transcendentalized. Johnson has an epiphany. The fiat has been spiritualized and idealized. It is no longer banal but sacred. For Merleau-Ponty and Kogan would say, it has been phenomenologically reduced. And with that, what the father of phenomenological philosophy, Edmund Husserl, calls its essential necessity, essential universality, its essential truthfulness, made evident, is become an object of meditation, aesthetic meditation. For phenomenologically reduces its essence, its essential aesthetic character has been made evident. We need not contemplate nature to have phenomenological epiphany, but seeing a parked car to spontaneously experience one. If one has one's mind's eye open, one's unconscious alert. The lessons of Johnson's painting is one does not need nature, a landscape, a tree, Mount Saint Victoire, to spontaneously trigger revelation, to suddenly see, unexpectedly experience, know things in their essential giveness, rather than taken for granted their matter of factness and usefulness, but experience them in all their aesthetic profundity, which is known to them as phenomenon themselves. Cups and planes, well, one can stay in one's house rather than venture into nature, as the still life green and as floor still life shows. The most ordinary objects can suddenly become sites of revelation and epiphanies. So it very much is going back to like a radical view of what we see or what is given to us, rather than our preconceived notions of like, okay, a car looks like this, there's a history to a car, there's the material components to it. It's like all of nature becomes transformed by just seeing, by just unlocking it. And so again, you can see this is where Heidegger comes in as well, along with like Husserl and Merleau-Ponty, right? It's like what is ready to hand, what is cleared forth into being, that we experience in that moment, rather than just looking at things as a sort of like an inframed category of what nature is, of standing reserve, of what is a car as a material and produced and manufactured thing. And so you could see like this is a phenomenological reduction that only the work of art can give us. And it's like, it's not just seeing a car anymore, right? So yeah.
Well, it's the question that I think is kind of a perennial question that affects all people. Is this what at the root of it all is something to you? What is the, I guess, the most reductive, abstract point? Do you identify something with X?
Right.
And for this instance, right, I'm seeing Kuspit talk about mainly color, and he's using good examples here of at what point can you reduce it down to the most evocative feeling that makes you feel something. And I mean,
Right.
this is very like that one right there, not this the vertical one. I mean, like clearly, like a large open pasture, a large open green field, and then of course the small bit of houses, right? Like, I mean, that can be something I see if I go drive outside of the Metroplex area, right? Like these large roaming fields, or I can go drive down a long FM road in Texas and see a site just like that.
Mm.
A small house and then large open farmland. And then again, if you were to ask me, well, what can I reduce that to? And I can reduce that down to maybe a hill, some green, some white and red. And so, I mean, colors do have that evocative emotional aspect to it. So yeah, I see where Cuspit's coming from.
Well, it reminds me of that one part in Stalker where they were talking about the nature of music, and Tarkovsky has this brilliant scene where music is really just a conglomeration of sounds that are wedded together, that have a form of tempo, that has a temporality to it because it is a beginning and end in a sequence. And then he pans over this lake in the zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then he says, as soon as he talks about music coming together into a form that is distinguishable, then you see the tree line, and then you don't recognize it just as a mirror to the sky, something that's very abstract, but you recognize it as a lake. So something that's very abstract comes into form. It no longer becomes just a mirror. Then it has a distinct sight line, a shoreline. And so the way that music takes various sounds and puts it into a coherent whole with a temporality. So I thought that was like a brilliant like little thing that only Tarkovsky could like really make. It's like, yeah. So anyways, this is the last paragraph. Yeah, there you go.
Yes, I'll take it away.
All right.
Perhaps the most extraordinary, memorable, astonishing paintings that Johnson has made are two paintings of the monumental Domino Sugar Factory complex on the East River in Brooklyn, New York, and which are listed there.
That's one of them. Yeah.
And there's one of them right there. Kind of reminds me of some of your work, Gio.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it reminds me of Edward Hopper as well, but Hopper was much more of a realist. Yeah, but it does. Yeah, that does remind me of some of my work. Yeah, especially with the texture. But,
yeah. Texture especially. In 2007, it became a designated New York City landmark. It certainly made an impression on Johnson, as its imposing, bleak facade suggests. There are masterpieces that bring to mind Baudelaire's idea that genius is nothing but childhood recollected in an imaginative memory. Dare one say it was not a happy childhood. The two huge, grim, dark, bleak, intimidating structures, the symbol of his father, the large, bulky building with the phallic smokestack,
Hmm.
the mother, the small, narrower, less prominent building, do not make a happy couple, however much sugar passed through the narrow chute that joined them. I may be overinterpreting the two. You don't say, Cuspit. But they do have the look of a recurrent dream, dare one say a nightmare. Johnson's equally abstract Merule Shed 1989 also has the look of a dream. Johnson grew up in New York. The paintings are mementos of the city and seem to epitomize the oppressive grandeur and commercial power, whatever symbolic meaning they have. They are imaginative epiphanies and phenomenological triumphs par excellence. Fraught with astonishing energy and concentrated form, they are masterpieces of aesthetic revelation, epitomizing abstraction. Like Merule Fiat, they have been phenomenologically reduced to their essence. But it is the profane, dark essence of death rather than the sacred, luminous essence of life distilled in Merule Fiat. Johnson grew up in New York, but he has escaped it for the aesthetic wonders of France, as Merule works show, and more broadly of Italy, and the Luciano d'Asso, the Yellow Bar, and the San Giovanni indicate. He lives in California, and he has painted its inhabitants, but he seems more at artistic home in France and Italy, where he paints the landscape in creative solitude. He is a rare artist, what Paul Valery called a painter who can convey the pleasure of perception.
Mm-hmm. And you could see, like, quite easily how, when artists were engaging, like the Impressionists really led the way. I mean, even before with Turner, where he's painting. People interpret Turner as having like a hopefulness for industrialization because he's painting a train, he's painting a factory, like he's painting a smelter where these men are like hunched over a furnace, and he's like sort of creating an aestheticized version of like something that's pure production capacity. And here you could see how the landscape, we don't really think of the urban centers or the industrial parks as a form of landscape, but he's treating the objects of creation by man just as if he's treating trees or hills or other various natural phenomenon. And he's like just sensuously like seeing the color blocks. He's not really focused on depicting like the realism of like what a fact, like there's other painters that do like industrial landscapes that have like very keen attention to detail, but he's really not, he's not obsessed with it as much as just depicting them as if he's painting any other abstract landscape. And so it's very funny how it's like, those people, like, those liminal space compilations, how there's like other people that compile images of like industrial parks or like offshore oil rigs. What's a thing called gigantophobia or there's a not thalassophobia. Is it thalassophobia where it's like you're afraid of like huge?
That's the water.
Yeah, but there's like one where you're afraid of like huge industrial man-created apparatuses. There's a term for it where like people have this
megalophobia.
Yeah, something like that, where it's like
the understanding of the fear of large objects.
But it's like a fear of industrial objects or something like that. It's like that specific.
Well, that's the only term I know. Is just megalophobia, like the fear of just large, imposing.
Yeah, I think megalophobia is that. Yeah. But it's funny how like the images they speak to people, like those liminal space images. I know we talked about this before on the show, but it's like it is funny how they become aestheticized. How something that's just purely a live leakophobia. You're afraid of the watermark in the video.
I'm afraid of the watermark in the video, knowing that it is my day to die in a construction site in China. No, but I mean, that is an interesting thing to consider because those things have become aestheticized to a point where it is sort of turned into a kitsch horror trope. Because, I mean, a dimly lit gas station, bathroom, or hallway, or an abandoned office park now becomes the place where the unknown is settled in. Because to some extent, right, like there is this... people don't really reduce things into abstractions, maybe outside of the political, but when you're truly alone, I think that's why this is it's been such a big horror trend for Zoomers, because you're never
Mhm.
truly alone. You're constantly on the scrying mirror that is your cell phone at all times. And when you do so, right, like what is it these things are meant to evoke? One, a sense of nostalgia, because you're usually utilizing technologies that are from your childhood or from before your time, right? The
Mhm.
analog stuff. But then secondly, you're also utilizing the fact that you are truly alone. You know, there's no smartphone, there's no even a Walkman or anything like that. That's not on you. So your mind is left to fill the blanks with the most casual things that even regular people, I still think, have that primal fear of when they are alone. The instinct kicks in, the animal
Oh, yeah.
brain kicks in, and we begin filling in shapes in the void, wondering what just might be there. And of course, depending on your religious views, if not, there's something that might actually be there, and that's what makes it 10 times more horrifying. Um, and and again, like the black and white stuff reminds me of that awful, and it's not awful in the sense that it's like horrifying. It's awful in the sense that it's incredibly grotesque and gory. But it's all more implied in your brain because of how it's shot, because it's all grainy and black and white. But I think of the film
Yeah.
Begotten, you know, and
Oh, what
uh,
film is that? Forgotten?
Begotten,
Oh,
Begotten.
Begotten. What's that about?
I'll let you look that one up. Maybe we might review that.
Okay.
But because it's an experimental horror film. But yeah, I mean, the abstraction can be a place where some people can epiphanize or come to a realization where they're terrified rather than finding and seeking pleasure.
Right. Yeah. But it's funny how like that, like being terrified is a form. Oh my god, I know
Yeah, this one.
it sounds totally like, but being terrified. Uh, a lot of like creepy pastas have come from this film.
Sure have.
Inspired by Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. Um, Stan Brocka's The Act of Seeing One's Own Eyes. That's a great film, by the way. The Act of Seeing One's Eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's crazy. No, but no, I was gonna say like how I was gonna be like a total theory cell and say that like there's a form of jeu d'essence and like being scared, like there's a perverse pleasure in it, and it's funny how like the horror genre becomes really big, especially nowadays. I mean, even though horror is sort of like on the wayside because the 2010 zombie thing is more or less passed, apart from like a few clingers
And thank
on.
God for it.
Thank God for it. Because remember, you like even like I remember like the director from was making fun of it in like Under the Silver Lake, where those like art hose in that show from Jesus and the Jesus Brides of Dracula, Jesus the Brides of Dracula. Like, they had this show on top of a building, and these art hoes were like talking about like, yeah, like it sort of represents like the vampirism in pop culture. Wow, I never thought of it that way. Sort of like represents the zombification of all culture. Like we're the zombies, right? Like, yeah, I never thought of it that way. And it's like a lot of like people like spoofing that. They're like spoofing that take, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it's funny how like even though horror becomes something like there's even like theory cell horror films, it's like it still has like a grip on us because it's an unknown, but it's still a known. Like even that film Begotten, like a lot of it is the purposeful abstraction of the face. It's what Deleuze called like the lack of faciality. It's the black hole of faciality. It's like
Mm.
there's no longer a recognizable topography to the face anymore. It's something purposely distorted. And in a way, though, but yet purposeful distortion and abstraction also tends to lead to something cute or beautiful as well. Like a lot of the cute aesthetic is just like the chibi aesthetic is a lot of just like a small, like an abstraction, like a simplification of an original existing form, right? Like, why do you think people think Funko Pops are cute? Like, I don't know why. It's like the big head and the black eyes. It's really demonic. Funko
Well,
Pops
I mean,
are
wouldn't
demonic.
that? I mean,
You
isn't the
know?
whole thing there in the same way that a lot of early alien? Well, I mean, people still do this, like the alien science fiction designs. They overly
Mhm.
emphasize neoteny, right? Like
Yeah.
the infantile, sort of natal features of animals and children, in order
Yeah.
to make it seem less harmless. I mean, this is the clear way you tell a good alien from a bad alien in science fiction. Is this which one looks more neotenous?
Yeah, like Screamers had the little girl that was
Yeah,
a
which was
robot,
kind of a good subversion of the trope. Whereas, nowadays you have like your Baby Yoda or whatever, that sort of shit. Which I mean is
Oh god.
but I mean, right? Like, that's how they would do it. And so anything that I think kind of flips that is always
Yeah.
good. It's just to me is a good twist on it because, I mean, not to go full Rosemary's Baby with it, but I mean, like if you were to ever
Mm.
have like a horror thing where like the child, or even like a foreign or an alien thing, which appears to be cute and neotenous, turns out to be the bad guy. Then you
Yeah.
have, because I mean, like the only times where it's done that where it's like schlocky is like that B movie shit where they were like clearly like a Gremlins parody.
Oh god, yeah, yeah, that one. What was it called?
I don't
Was it
remember
just
off the top
called
of my head.
Gremlins? Yeah.
No, Gremlins is the original. Hold on, I'm just gonna look it up because the
Yeah.
name is going to kill me.
But even like a
Um,
feminist critique, you could say that like that's personally on me
Ghoulies,
is
that's
like
what it was. Ghoulies,
Ghoulie?
yeah,
What?
or Critters, those two. Anyways,
Critters,
but
yeah, 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 that one.
absolute shitty. But I mean, like the whole premise of like weird, cute, furry creatures are actually like these total like shit heels. Um, but I mean, if you could do it in a serious way, I feel like you could get a pretty good horror thing going with it. But again, I don't have a lot of hope for good horror films these days.
Well, yeah, even like Star Trek did that with the Tribbles. Like it's yeah. No, but like even a feminist critique would say that a lot of horror films has like dealing with neoteny and the line between beauty and horror. It's like that is also like that has a form of eroticism as well. A
Mm.
lot of horror deals with the young girl or the young woman. There's a lot of academic theory self feminists who have written about horror films. Uh,
Women.
yeah, well, and of course, like the subversion of it with Ari Aster and like Midsummer, right? Like she embraces being like the leader of the Scandinavian cult, and I know like a lot of frogs hate that film because it is sort of like subverting Scandinavian traditions, saying that it's like weird and creepy, and it's like it's all in the light. It's like a subversion of horror films itself because it's all in this glaring, beautiful light in the middle of day, and it's like not, which is kind of creepy. A lot of zombie films have that as well, but even like the remake of Dawn of the Dead has like the open light is like bluish and almost like dawn, like
Yeah.
that when they're going to the pier. Yeah, it's like man, that was one of my favorite films when I was a kid. I remember watching with my tenant. um like just that part when Disturbed comes on, it's like dude, yeah, that was amazing, but no, but yeah, I think that, but when it comes to like in fine art in particular, like there is sort of a very lyrical and very like free playing of colors when it comes to landscape. And I was always drawn to like that type of art. Like I was always drawn to like Edvard Munch and even like the abstract expressionists, and even the ones that got into landscape like Helen Frankenthaler. Like I always found myself gravitated towards that style. But yeah, it's a great article. Donald Kuspit's a great. He wrote this one book on the death of art, which I find very fascinating. And he takes a lot from like Baudrillard. But of course, if you want to read Baudrillard's take, read Conspiracy of Art. That really is, I believe, After the Orgy is also in that collection. Um, but yeah, the Conspiracy of Art is a great book. I cite it in my book that's hopefully going to come out this year, by the end of this year. So yeah, Dawn of the Dead was good. Although I do not like Sarah Polley as a person. She is a horrendous libtard, but I do like her as an actress. She's a very good actress. Yeah, Total Art Death. There you go. Thank you, Philip. Total Art Death. So yeah, yeah, it was, and we were trying to like historic viewership for a not too explicitly political episode of Dijark, but
We have dozens of these episodes.
Oh my
They're just
god.
so few and far between because so much. Well, it's not that so
Yeah,
much crap has happened in the last like 6 months. It's just that
yeah.
um,
People want us
as
to talk about crap.
as I said last week, we're on Twitter, so you don't have to be. But then I realized that we had like over 1,000 people watching on Twitter today, so it's like, well, you're all on Twitter too. So like, welcome. Regardless, that's like the best viewership we've had on Twitter. So it's
Yeah,
awesome.
we're
Don't know.
sandwiched
I don't know
between.
what happened, but that was great.
Well, I think because it's just Infowars and Mario in a Fall Space, and it's probably
Oh, even
yeah.
better.
Yeah, even better. We're like the baby in between the two behemoths, but uh no, but you wanted to talk about this dopamine land thing. I thought that
Oh,
was
we
like
can do that. We can do that next week. It was just something
all
Simon
right.
Roberts tagged us in. We can cover that next week.
We'll cover it next week. Let's go to super chats.
Yes.
So, but before that, you what do you have to promote besides the McLuhan? Well,
Absolutely. So I, of course, had a lovely interview with the grandson of the late and great Marshall McLuhan. I had a great conversation with Andrew McLuhan, who is the founder of the McLuhan Institute, which he established in 2017. Had him for about an hour and a half. Please head on over to my YouTube channel and all other podcast platforms where I am at, and go listen to that. Highly recommend it. I was very, very gracious that apparently somebody had DM'd him my conversation with Dimes about his grandfather's work. And so he's like, yeah, I'm willing to talk to you. And I was like, fantastic. Let's schedule that as soon as possible.
nice.
So go do that. I was recently on Buck Johnson's program, the Counterflow podcast. You can go look that up. I have it on the community tab for those that are interested. I'll also have a Substack post telling you where I've been these last couple of weeks in terms of podcast appearances. I was also on Meta Prime's podcast, which, again, I'll have a Substack post linking you to that very soon. 3 hours of him letting me ramble and rant. He was a very gracious host. He did not interrupt me at all, which was a bad thing. He should have interrupted me more. And then last but not least, I was on Orrin McIntyre's show yesterday talking about Paul Gottfried's anti-fascism in video games. What's not to love? So those are the things that I have to promote. I will have a new Substack out tomorrow reviewing Don Bluth's 1997 movie Anastasia.
Yeah, all Prude's links are down below in the YouTube bio, and go and subscribe to Subscribestar, where you can get exclusive content and you can get first dibs on current content. And of course, go to my Patreon, patreon.com/Productions, and also on Substack, where I have also the archive. And this tomorrow, I promise I will release a content-minded extra. I haven't released an extra in a long time for all of my subscribers, where I rant about Russia and Richard Hanania for an hour or so. And I will come out next week with a brilliant episode 60 of Content Minded, where I rant about Heidegger and Erasmus, and I rant about it's a very philosophy-driven episode. I do talk about Nick Land, and I read I read the Fang Numina essay on machinic desire, where I talk about evolution and the future of guided evolution. And I also talk about new metal. There's an article on new metal, and I read a long post by RFH on Fat Guys. So there you go. You have Heidegger, Nick Land,
and Radfem Hitler,
and Thomas 777. There you go. Amazing. Let's get to one of my favorite portions of the show, the super chats. So let's do Entropy first. I know. So the Entropy link is in the bio. It's also linked on the Twitter tweet for this stream, but it's also linked in the chat here, and you can link it. It's in the bio down below. So first off, for $3, Seneca, Prude/Gio. Favorite legend/myth from your home state can be a cryptids and strange beings or very influential local men who shaped your state into what it is today. Well, that's kind of doxy. But yeah, you go ahead, Prudent. I don't know. Texas has tons of them.
There are a lot of great historical things that have happened that a lot of the stuff, for instance, that I can talk about without necessarily geographically or personally doxing myself are actually based in reality. A lot of my family, my mother's side of my family has been in Texas since they first started really letting Anglo white settlers into the area when the Mexican government was like, come on over. And then they really regretted that decision. My mother's side of the family's done a really good job at taking care of a lot of our family history and genealogy, which includes Civil War records. So one of the cool things that I got to grow up learning and knowing, and I've been to some of those historical sites, is that my family took part in the Red River campaign for the Confederacy and served under General Taylor, and then served under Mountain, and was part of fighting against the Union along the Red River. So those are some of the stories that I grew up learning about from my own family. There's also things like the Great Gainesville hanging and stuff like that. There's some things in there that my family's participated in. So as for legends or cryptids and mythologies, not so much. I was always more into the history thing because that was stuff that I actually got to learn that my family was a part of. So for me, it was more history than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, didn't you say you also had family that fought for the Union too?
Yeah, my father's side of the family were Scottish, Scots-Irish immigrants that came here in the 1830s. And there is a family plot up where my father's side of the family is originally from in the Midwest that basically has them fighting in every war America has fought in since the Mexican-American War until today.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's real American right there. You have families on both sides of the Civil War.
Yeah, and I got a family plot with my real last name on it.
Whoa.
So, yeah, there's
Yeah.
that used to be a thing where you could tell where home was, is where not where are you from, but where are your kin buried, and that's not something that people really talk about these days anymore, obviously, because of how metropolitan and cosmopolitan we become. But there's a place in the Midwest where my family and my lineage is buried.
Nice. As for me, oh yeah, I do have other piece of news. Me and Kathrine. Hopefully, it comes out tomorrow on Friday. But me and Kathrine interviewed the original pickup artist, Ross Jeffries. Before them all, there was Ross Jeffries. He invented Pua. Well, along with Iceberg Slim, but Iceberg Slim was in the '60s. So that's gonna be a great one. It was a great stream. I mean, it was a great interview. But to answer that, I don't know. It's kind of doxy for me. But here in the Niagara region, I remember they boarded up though. Yeah, sorry, Phil, Kathrine and I. They boarded up though. But when I was a kid, I used to go to it's called the Blue Ghost Tunnel in St. Catharines. And there was always rumors around it, and it had this blue mist. And there's also there's in my town, there's this other mansion that has always been rumored to be haunted. But there's tons of a lot of like War of 1812 and other like ghost stories and whatnot in the Niagara region. So yeah, but the Blue Ghost Tunnel, because when I was a kid, I would go there, and yeah, it's probably my favorite. But thank you for the question, Seneca. That was a good one. And we just have Sam153 for $10. Super Sneed 3. This third Super Sneed. So thank you very much, Sam153. And again for Seneca for $3. My favorite local legend, Senator Thomas Hart Benton. My favorite cryptid, Missouri Momo. Missouri Momo? Well, there you go. Thomas Hart Benton was a senator too. Oh, I'm thinking of the artist though.
Momo the Monster. I'm not looking this up.
I think Carpetbagger had a video.
Is a purported ape-like creature, similar descriptions to Bigfoot, that was allegedly sighted by numerous people in rural Louisiana and Missouri in 1971 and 1972. Interesting.
Momo the Monster.
Neat.
Yeah, I think they have like a roadside attraction thing that I think Carpetbagger reviewed. You know the YouTuber Carpetbagger?
No, I don't.
Yeah, he like goes around into like all of America, and he does a lot of like the roadside attraction stuff.
Neat.
So, yeah. Oh yeah, it's a really good channel actually. So Fishy Frenzy for $5 just saw Hostage with Bruce Willis. I think I saw Hostage back in the day. Underrated film with the self-described mashup of 40s noir, 70s action, and early 2000s music video. Punchy violence and tight plotting. Seen any movies on my movie list also? It's it's mostly lesser seen films. Yeah, me too. I like a lot of obscure indie films, but yeah, Hostage. I remember seeing Hostage back in the day. It was pretty good.
Adding that onto the movie list to watch.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But thank you, Fishy Frenzy. And finally, for the Entropy super chats, unless anyone wants to donate to Entropy, I don't. Where is Zoe Zaleski today? I don't know. And Seneca again for $3. Speaking of haunted mansions, look up Lemp Mansion in St. Louis, Missouri. Lemp Mansion. I think I've heard of Lemp Mansion.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you, Seneca. Those are pretty good questions about lore.
A historical house built in 1890. The Lemp family, and then apparently it is said to be haunted by members of that family. Interesting.
Nice. And so here now we're going to do this YouTube super chats. So you can donate now before the stream ends. Lou Templar, good friend Lou Templar, for $10. I haven't returned from Twitter jail. I have returned from Twitter jail to bestow upon you my dollary dues. Yeah, he recently got his account back. It was a misunderstanding.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So congratulations to Lou Templar for getting his original.
Just be careful when you do that to not
threaten people with violence
or use words that might be interpreted as such.
Yeah. Oh boy. Anyways, that was actually a great interview Kathrine and I did, because he really goes into like Rollo Tomasi and like Roosh and Mystery. It's funny because at one point Ross Jeffries is like, Mystery, what he's doing is basically like a micro version of a cult, because like you have to like the frame is that like you isolate the chick from her friend group and the club, and then you move in, and then it's like this Baroque. And I'm like, how the fuck does any guy have time to do that in a club? They gotta like isolate the friend. Like, I don't know, Mystery. Just well, pickup artistry was partially invented in Toronto for a reason. Put it that way. Yeah. That was like Roosh's book, How to Bang Denmark. He said like Denmark was notoriously hard because like women, like they're just like they're different, and it's like, yeah. Anyways, you can't find those books anymore. He gave up selling those books when he became an Orthodox Christian. So, anyways, Roosh V. What's Roosh V been up to lately? I haven't heard from him.
I presume blogging and TradCon posting. I don't know what he does these days.
Yeah. I remember he had that New Year's episode with E. Michael Jones. He did a podcast on New Year's with E. Michael Jones once. But anyways, so Sam B, our good friend Sam B, for $10, he says, BreadTube always gives me the impression if they were to get a significant amount of power, what they would do terrible things, especially individuals like Vouch. Oh yeah, that's a given.
They would just be way more open about the kids they diddle.
Yeah, and they would be way more open.
And then casually explaining why it's okay on a press.
Yeah, and why they should redact the chuds. Like that's
like they would just have like their they wouldn't even have press secretaries. They'd be so much of a narcissist that they would do the press conference themselves, explaining why it's so important for them to have a horse farm right next to their private resort with kids and whatever. They're evil. They're evil people.
They're evil.
And I mean, like,
yeah,
I hate to. I'm not to counter signal too much here, but like when Jay Burden does his little tap the sign that our enemies are deeply embarrassing people, remember that those aren't truly the people in charge. Like the people that do run things. Like sure, there can be incompetency, but it's not that they're embarrassing. It's just that you are witnessing the worst dregs of society getting to embrace their worst passions and impulses to do so. There are still some genuinely evil enemies out there, and one for instance, like the Pritzkers are a great example. The Pritzkers aren't embarrassing. Sure, one of them's like a tranny or whatever, but the power that they wield over like the transgender medical industrial complex and the amount of money and corruption that goes into that, sure, they might look embarrassing, but they're way more than that. They still have a lot of competent foes on the ground.
Yeah, it's yeah, the people that really run things, you wouldn't call them embarrassing. I mean, even the ones that are like super elite, like you could say that like Jeff Bezos and his like ex-wife and his current wife kind of look embarrassing, but that's like midlife crisis tier. That's not like,
yeah, sure, Bill Gates has man tits, but he has way more power than we will ever.
Oh yeah, exactly. And Bill Gates is just generally a terrible person. Like, okay, Jeff Bezos is a lib. Like, he runs the Washington Compost. But, like, in terms of square inch per inch evil, like, Bill Gates, really, I fear for what he plans for humanity. But anyways, yeah. So I mean, did you see his ex-wife, Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, wants to give all her money away to charities, and you can tell it's going to be funding like Trans Poetry Hour.
Oh, exactly. That's what it always is.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to donate to charity. No, you're going to donate to certain NGOs that will also pay you back, and then you'll get into all sorts of
no tax,
terrible
0% taxes too. No tax.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I think Ina Stepman quote tweeted that with imagine the damage that her money can do to society by funding certain activist groups and whatnot. But I mean, I don't know. I can't. Hopefully, his ex-wife just donates to like whatever they're going to donate anyways to, and hopefully doesn't do too much more damage. But you never know.
Assume the worst.
Assume the worst, exactly. But Jeff Bezos has his like significantly younger bimbo Latina wife and full of plastic. But anyways, Capitalismo for $5. Foreigners except for Gio have to go back.
Less than 1 year.
Less than one. Oh my god. I love how Nightmare Vision like really popped. Like that took off less than 1 year. Trump gets elected, and what's funny? There was a video of Vaush that someone shared, some like sock dam, and saying like, you people, like, you don't realize like demonizing the opposition's wrong. Where Vaush is like, they're evil, they're demons, they want to put us in camps, and like a million like non-binary MB kids with like the flags in the bio, like Palestine and whatever. Like, is he wrong? Is he wrong? And it's like, well, like really, I don't know. It's just political discourse is just really hit all-time lows, because the thing is, they're very open about their intention now. They're very open about the fact that, like, again, just go to Twitter and type in Yimby and you'll see what they want.
Horrors beyond your comprehension.
Yeah. But anyways, our good friend John Carter for $10. Pepperoni poutine anchor babies won. Pepperoni poutine. Oh my god.
I love that. That's great. We need more of that.
Anchor babies won. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see in the coming years. But thank you, John Carter, for $10.
Yeah, and another girlfriend. Knock her up already.
I'll try. Anyways, and lobster crustacean for $10. Gamergate stream when? Maybe next week. Also, what are your thoughts on the rapture? My father brings it up every other day, it seems. He's convinced it's happening soon. Would love to hear both of your perspectives. I have a very Catholic conventional perspective of you'll never know until it comes like a thief in the night. But what's the Orthodox view on the rapture, Prude?
That it is a new and heterodox doctrine that neither the Eastern or Roman Catholic Church prescribe to. It's a Protestant thing.
Oh yeah. But I mean, like, well, but like the popular imagination of the rapture is
the one that you would hear in evangelical circles is not something that the traditional Roman or Orthodox view prescribes to. My grandmother believes in it, although it's not something, how I understand it conceptually from how I read it. It implies that there are more than one second coming, which doesn't make any sense. Also, to say that like the good ones will be spared and will be taken up, and then all this tribulation will happen for the rest of us, sort of seems to contradict what also gets said in the garden in Matthew 24. So I don't seem to, I don't adhere to it. As for a Gamergate stream, that would be fun to just do a 10-year retro. That's the goal for us, to be perfectly honest with you, Lobster, is that we would love to get Carl Benjamin on.
Yeah.
And to just talk to him for an hour and just be like, hey, Carl, it's been 10 years. How you feeling? How are games doing? Do you still want to just play video games, Carl? Are you here to save the West? Get in, normie, show him all the old artwork. How do you feel about UKIP these days?
Oh my God.
I just want to ask him a million questions. That's all.
Yeah, me too.
Carl, you used to follow me on your alt before you got your account back. Follow me back, bastard.
Oh my God. That'd be crazy if we got the Saint of Swindon on. He really is a living, like, he really, very few people come back from the brink of being a lolcow, but he's like one of the few men in history who has really transcended the brink of lolcowdom to embrace a more serious visage. And I think that, as much as we may disagree with his political quibblings and certain actions that he did in the past that were kind of embarrassing, well, not kind of, they were embarrassing. I do feel like a lot of us owe a great, I know I'm going to get heat for this. A lot of us do kind of owe kind of a debt to Carl Benjamin. You could say that Mr. Medicare was the one that really started Gamergate, Daddy Jim, but Sargon, he really did accelerate a lot of social conditions that led, from Gamergate onwards, Gamergate being the ground zero of the internet. Yeah, so
I don't
we'll
know why
see
you
what
would. I
happens.
don't know why you would get flack for that. A lot of people got their start with Sargon before.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Moving further to the right or in some other direction.
Yeah, and I think like Sargon, he really did politically evolve. I mean, he's still kind of like, I know Millennial Woes doesn't exactly like him again because like Sargon will selectively pull back from certain things.
Yes,
but at the end of it, I mean, I don't know, because like they've had a beef forever, so it's like, I always love those debates between Sargon and Millennial Woes. But anyways, we'll see. Who's next? Oh, Sam B. Sam B. Oh my God, for $20. Thank you, Sam B. Also, I discovered you via the Morgoth pipeline. What is your opinion on is it mercenarism?
you mean mercenaryism?
Mercenarism, or how much further do you think it will stretch, considering how heavily it has been used in the last 20 years on and off? Oh, mercenaries is a military mercenary.
I'm looking it up.
Mercenarism.
That's mercenarism. Yeah, I would assume that's what he means.
There was a moment, I think, in like a lot of Fukuyama, like post 90s type of thinking around the dissolution of the nation state, and how mercenaries would like sort of fill in the void. It's sort of like neoliberals and ANCAPs both have like a similar thought process, but mercenaries are just like they're a universal constant of the battlefield. They're not going to go away. They're politically convenient for sticky geopolitical situations. But I think that political radicalism, rather than the sort of like cynical mercenary that will take on anything for the right pay, I think that's probably the future. You'll have ideological mercenaries that probably in some ways are more scary than like executive outcomes. And maybe Eric Prince will become a Caesar of America. Who knows?
It's all we can hope for.
Well, what are your thoughts, Prude, on the future mercenaries geopolitically?
Just whoever decides to use them needs to be consistently aware of what Machiavelli said all those years ago. If you fail that lesson, it doesn't end well for you. Just ask Prigozhin.
Yeah, there you go. But I mean, also like the American military is also. Taking use of the immigration situation.
Well, yeah, but I mean, also consider we're also an all-volunteer force. So I mean, at a certain point in time, if you don't want to die for whatever the regime does, you have to resort to mercenarism. In this case, ethnic mercenaries that are going to do it. Also, because I mean, like most of the people, if you look at the stats from Afghanistan, like 85% of all of American combat deaths were white guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like American whites are still the fighting force of the United States' armed forces. The rest is more or less a glorified logistical jobs program for a lot of people that aren't ever going to say, yes, I'm willing to die for the concept of the nation or the idea that is America. It's never going to happen. So, I mean, this problem will continue to persist. And if Blackwater and Eric Prince ever wanted to like come back and do something here in America, be a lot of guys willing to do it, especially a lot of operators that have been recently let go from Uncle Sam's payroll that are looking for something to do.
Not that we endorse any of
No,
this.
but I'm just saying, like, if someone wants to start a company or to be opportunistic, there's a lot of room for it to happen. But again, follow Machiavelli's suggestions, be a good realist, and don't get killed.
Very, very late Roman Empire vibes if you think of it that way, right?
Uh,
Late Roman Republic vibes.
oh yes,
Um,
we've been there for a while now.
oh yeah. But we'll see what happens if Eric Prince truly is serious in his political ambitions. But anyways, $2 for Philip Daniel. Thoughts on the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict? It's a tragedy, and people are ignoring it for other hotly politically contested conflicts around the globe, whether it be Israel and Palestine or Ukraine and Russia. And really, it's a facilitated by the West, partially facilitated future ethnic cleansing of the Armenians. And the Armenians will be kicked out of their homeland for no good reason. And Pashinyan is really one of the most despicable political, and that's a very high bar, by the way, in terms of current crop of political leaders around the world. Pashinyan is one of the most despicable political leaders in existence today. He has sold out the Armenian people, and it's just the War Report has done a lot of coverage of this, and I agree with the War Report. I agree with Constantine and GSP. It's truly a tragic situation.
It's also one of those conflicts that isn't as easy to paint a black and white picture that the media can easily cover, like you had mentioned with Israel, Palestine, Ukraine, and Russia and the United States, because the people that back Armenia versus the people who back Azerbaijan break the traditional geopolitical conventions of who's backing who.
Exactly.
You can see, Russia v. Israel, America v. Turkey. And of course, the American position in this situation has only exacerbated it. But it's also an area in which is going to continue to be messy and ugly, in part because you do have some corridors there that the Russians would like to maintain control over. And at the same time, you have an interscene ethnic conflict that isn't going to get resolved until one side get rid of the other or completely turns them into a diaspora, which seems to be the ongoing trajectory. But because you can even see this on what I call IR Twitter, where it's mainly like just international relations scholars. So like this whole conflict just sort of breaks down on no traditional lens or lines of alliances that you see elsewhere, which makes it more complex to look at. But
even Iran is like going against other Islamists.
Oh yeah, which makes it all the more awkward.
They're Turkish
to look at, and mainly because it is due to Turkish influence and Turkmen influence as well. So but I mean, as of course the Armenians being one of the oldest Christian peoples on earth, those are where my prayers and sympathies lie. Yeah,
exactly. 100% agree. And we can only pray for the people of Armenia. I know, like, the diaspora in America, I know they tend to skew lib, but I think that I mean, let's face it, Pashinyan, again, another CIA plant. So make of that what you will. And we have one more in the entropy from Owen Zaleski. I wonder where he's for $5. Owen Zaleski, hello, gents. Hope you're all doing well. Please pray for me. And there are a lot of things that have come up. I feel pulled in all directions. I'm working hard on the PP. Fingers crossed that it all comes together. Feels good when you talk about art. Oh, thank you, Owen. And we will pray for you. All right. Here's a good one by John Carter for $5. Replace Clarence Thomas with Tommy Sotomayor on the Supreme Court. Oh my God! No, ideally you'd have them together though.
Ideally.
Oh
ideally.
That's crazy, Tommy Sotomayor. They're calling their assholes pussy. Remember that? The Twitter space.
Oh.
I was there. 10,000 live viewers for the Tommy Sotomayor anti-transformer Twitter space. Oh my God!
One day,
and just a super sticker by Gmall for $10. Thank you, Gmall. Is your profile picture Brett Kreischer with a Big Mac on his stomach, or is it some other fat guy with a Big Mac? That's a good profile picture. Anyways. And for $5, our good friend, internet friend, there's no better example of being stuck in 2014 than still talking about Grudge. You bastard. he cringed when I told him that we're going to cover the Grimes thread. Yeah, Grimes is the queen of the early 2010s pitchfork pop music. So indie pop, anyways. For $2 by Philip Daniel, lifelong Yahtzee Francois Jeannot, founded PLO and FLN. That is true, by the way. That is very true. The Israelis did have a hand in, well, the Americans and the Israelis did have a hand in the PLO at one point. So, man, that's wait, Yahtzee.
As in, yes, the other word.
Oh boy. Oh come on, Philip. You like. That's a Ben Shapiro take. Okay, I know it's true, okay? But I'm just saying that it's like Ben Shapiro saying that the Palestinians are the real Austrian painters. I'm not accusing you, Philip, of that. But I mean, okay, yeah, I will agree. But then there was a lot of I will admit, there is a lot of glow-in-the-dark activity around the creation of Hamas as well, right? Right, Prude? So there's a...
Well, I mean, the point that he raises is factually correct. It's just that...
Yeah.
How much of that still lies within their influence today? And again, that kind of goes back to the argument of how much do you want to take the Islamofascism part seriously? I don't think most people who are there fighting for Hamas would call themselves a National Socialists or fascists or Nazis. But I mean,
yeah,
if there are clearly people with those tendencies that are related to it, sure. But again,
well, there's some that use
something I'm going to have to do more reading on before I comment further.
I know there was that flag of the Palestinian flag with the Austrian painter symbol, the Buddhist symbol, but I know like whether they're genuine or whether it's to piss off the Israelis, like there is. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, Philip is correct. There has been like a lot of far right influences in the Middle East, but there's also been far left influences in the Middle East as well. I know the Soviet Union had their claws very deep into Iran at one point, certainly in Iraq and Syria, but it is an ideological smorgasbord in the Middle East, so it's complicated geopolitically. Yeah. Anyways, Capitalismo for $5. DA Cinematic Universe when?
Oh Lord, let's not get a film universe. Let's manage a show one step at a time.
Yeah, I wonder who
we'll take
play
pitches
us.
Though. We'll take pitches. We can play ourselves. We're narcissistic enough to do this, Gio. We can play ourselves.
What wasn't that like how?
Finally, I can play with myself.
Oh boy, wasn't that like how John Wayne played himself in the Iwo Jima film?
I mean, he played the same character for like 50 fucking movies. What do you mean?
No, but he was in Iwo Jima, but then he played a film about the winds of Iwo Jima, right? Like, was that called The Winds of Iwo Jima?
Don't know. I don't think John Wayne was middle-aged by the time that the war had really started, so I don't know if he actually... I don't think he served. I mean, he just did a lot of propaganda films.
No, but who was the actor that did serve but then played a war film about... I thought it was John Wayne.
No, you're probably thinking of Audie Murphy, but he was in the European theater.
Yeah. No, but he definitely did that film about Iwo Jima, right? John Wayne, or no?
I'd have to check his filmography. He's only got over 170 movies.
Yeah, true. There's already a Sotomayor in the Supreme Court, but if you guys can remember who the actor I'm thinking of, may have been Audie Murphy. Anyways, one last super chat by Lou Templar for $5. I promise not to undome libturds again on Twitter. That's what got him banned the first time.
There you go.
So, sorry, the Sands of Iwo Jima. The Sands of Iwo Jima. That's the... Yeah. Anyways, this has been a great stream, Prude.
Yeah, it was a fun time.
Yeah, maybe next... Yeah, we're kind of saving...
He was in the movie The Sands of Iwo Jima, not The Winds.
Sorry, not the... I got confused. It wasn't Winds. It was Sands of Iwo Jima, the film.
Yeah.
So, Yeah. There was a controversy there where he like they didn't want him to do it, but because it was like, oh, it's too soon. But the studio went ahead with it. So, anyways, yeah. So next week we'll come back and like I say, Digital Archipelago on Prude's channel next week. Content Minded will be a solo episode next week, and hopefully Default will come out with the Ross Jeffries episode tomorrow. And tomorrow I will upload that Content Minded Extra for all my patrons that will be available on Substack and Patreon, where I rant about Richard Hanania and the war in Ukraine for almost 2 hours. So, yeah, fun times.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be live next week on my channel, and we'll be streaming it to Twitter and Rumble as per usual. I'll have the movie review essay out tomorrow, and then I'll hopefully have another essay out talking about hauntology and Mr. Gottfried's work on anti-fascism. That'll hopefully be out next week, and then after that, the Stalin War series will continue with some recordings. I'm going to hopefully try and get one done this week. There you go. And then more videos to come. There'll probably be a fishing video out either this coming week or the next week afterwards.
Nice.
Yep.
That's good. Yeah, this another fishing video.
Yeah, it's finally getting warm enough to go out there and put the camera up and all that.
Yeah, I should do some painting videos again with commentary. I used to do those.
You should.
But yeah, I'm gonna start getting out with plein air painting. It's warm enough. So it's been record viewership too. So
yeah, congratulations.
I feel bad for leaving, but it's been 3 hours.
Yeah,
because people do that in Twitter Space, like, oh, we have all these people here, so we might as well ramble on. But anyways, thank you. So, like,
see, unlike Night Owls, we don't have to go for 5 hours because there's only just 2 of us, and we don't have to bring on people like Amy Therese or anything like that. It works out great.
Yeah, maybe one day we'll bring on Fennel Blowdart or someone. We'll see.
Maybe we can just like try and get and coax Nightmare Vision and them to come on.
Yeah, we could do that because like I know that I know that Alex Kashuda had Night Owls on. So
yeah, and they also had Nightmare Vision will be live with Pat Casey later this afternoon. So
oh, nice.
Yeah, go head on over to Rumble and see that. Yeah, it'll be Day Owls. That's the nice part. It's at a decent hour where I can actually listen to it for like 4.5 hours or however long it goes.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
The last time I listened to it, though, I passed out halfway through, and then I was just like, "What did I miss?" And then someone in chat was like, "You didn't miss much." Apparently, Amy Therese came on, and I was like, "Oh, cool."
You missed a good one yesterday.
I felt well. My loyalty is to my friends.
Yeah, we'll have to go. I'm going to watch the Boston versus Toronto game soon. What are your thoughts on Dune? I don't want to talk about Dune. I don't want to talk about Zendaya. I don't want to talk about Sydney Sweeney. I don't want to talk about any of.
I'm okay with the Sydney Sweeney discourse because it means my timeline is heterosexual again. So whatever gets right-wing Twitter to be straight, I'm all for it. God, please.
Yeah, but they keep talking about Zendaya, though. So it's like...
Well, you got to compare the good with the ugly. I will not discuss it. I haven't seen a single thing she's ever been in, and I will continue to not to. The only Dune that I like is the book, the Larry and Jihad prequel, and the David Lynch Dune. I have not seen Dune 1 or Part 2. Never will.
There you go. Anyways, as we always say, follow us, support us, in any way you can. Me and Prude. God bless. Goodbye. Too sweet.
See you, gents.